Good evening, all. Let me just change this view to something that's slightly better than that speedy, that close-up one that shows all the warts. I am joined by Elfbait. I think we might be joining, but we shall see. And given that last week's discussion was all about problem players and horror stories, we're going to discuss the things that make us look stupid, things that make us like the objects of murder. Say hello to Halakar, hello to Grumpy Old Slan, hello to Mage's Musings. Mage's Musings says, good afternoon. Oh, you're clearly in a part of the world where your clocks are wrong because it's very much evening. So, any gaming this weekend, Elfbait, since we last saw you?
I did manage to get a session in for my 5e game on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
That went pretty well. Here's about some of the gripes from that came up in that game. In the entire we play for about maybe 3 hours a night and managed to get through 2 encounters. So with a 4-person party. So.
Funnily enough, that's something I do plan on talking about in the future, that precise topic. We shall save that one for another day.
Other than that, I've just been... Oh, go ahead. Oh, no, I was going to say, other than that, I've just been doing some game design for a project and building terrain for miniature stuff. So that counts as gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, it does, yeah. I mean, I've been mostly working. I in my retail day job, I work alternate weekends, and this was I worked Saturday and Sunday, and I work every Sunday night as well, hosting a pub quiz. So Sunday was very, very busy. I ran a game on Saturday night. Party there are a fair way into UK4 When a Star Falls now, but I can't really remember how it ended because when I get a bit tired, my brain goes a little bit haywire, and I think I started feeling as though I was becoming a little bit incoherent in my descriptions towards the end, and I was quite relieved when they said it was time to finish. So that was. But I think the session was good up until then. Normally, when I do that when I work over a weekend, I spend quite lazy on a Monday, but I might do a bit of work towards a video and then record 2 videos on the Tuesday. But this week, I didn't get any preparation work at all. I've just been saying to Elfbait in the little holding room beforehand, because my wife decided on Monday that we would go karting, which is a lot more fun than writing scripts for YouTube videos, I'm afraid. And I've spent the last 2 days afterwards aching. Every bone in my body feels like it has been shook to bits. Because I'm a competitive dad and I had to try really hard and beat my kids. Hence, I only made 1 video this week, and that was on Tuesday, the Fiend Folio. But I played a game on Monday night as well. And that was 5th edition, and that was the campaign where the DM is wrestling a bit with the material. And it went a lot better. It was a lot more straightforward. It was a lot more traditional. So that's
good.
We're back on track. Cool. Right. Hello, TTBS. I don't think I've seen you in one of our live ones before. I know you keep giving me experience points on my videos. You haven't told me whether I've leveled up yet. What's this? General Nutsack? Who's getting lazy? Who's getting lazy? Right. So we're going to talk tonight. I don't know if Saxis is going to join us. He has shown up on Discord, but he hasn't said whether he's going to pop into the general discussion or not. And Omanal's been busy in the Discord as well today, so maybe he'll join us in a bit. But we're going to talk about things that annoy us, pet peeves, things that you sometimes might be a bit embarrassed to admit as well, because they are really often some are serious, but most are completely inconsequential. Oh, I'm level 2 now, TTBS. Thank you. What's my character class? I don't know, so I don't know what dice I roll for hit points. My first one, I'm going to be a bit of a stuck record on this. My first one is I have a real issue with some of the language that is used around gaming tables at the moment. And the way words have changed in terms of their meanings, and the way the quality of English has absolutely nosedived. And the first one I'm going to I'm a bard, right? Okay. Sadly, I'm not one of those bards who's had a lot of success. You know what I mean? I may have tried when I was younger, but the charisma wasn't high enough. But the first word that really annoys me is stealth. Stealth is a noun. Stealthy is an adjective. So why do players say that they are, can I stealth up to the door? Can I
the
stealth
application of
into the
rules
cave?
language as actual descriptive language.
Exactly. It's not a damn verb. You cannot stealth. It is a noun. You can use stealth. You can move stealthily. You can try and apply stealth to an action, but you cannot stealth. And my players now do it to wind me up. They say it specifically to wind me up. I have this selective hearing when it comes to stealth now. If they say they stealth something, I just completely ignore them or give them the stare. But there we go. That's quite how petty and pedantic I'm going to be on this chat tonight. I hate people using the word stealth as a verb.
I don't run into that too much, fortunately. But I do feel like that a lot of that shorthand does take the place of actual description way too often.
Yes.
And so
completely.
even in cases where much more proper parlance is used, I still find myself having to ask for additional description, because it'll be like, well, can I use stealth to get up there, or can I move up there stealthily? And I usually find myself asking, okay, well, how are you going to go about doing that?
I don't mind them saying move stealthily,
because I don't mind that.
They're describing a verb. I think how they're going to do it.
Yeah, what you're describing though
is
the ultimate in shorthand though, but I still feel like even still they'll be like, I'd like to move stealth. I'd like to use my stealth to get to the wall. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Or how are you going about it? Or give me a little bit of information so that I can inform, especially like in 5th edition, what the DC is going to be. Like, if you're like, I'm just going to walk straight across to the wall, I'm like, okay, well, there's gravel and moonlight, things like that. No, I don't run into that, fortunately enough. But the current thing that really is a pet peeve for me, the one that's paramount for me right now, is skill piling.
Right.
Where one player's like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and like last Monday, for example, the ranger in my party, who was the quietest player in the party, is like, okay, well, I'm the ranger, I should probably climb up the rock face and go ahead and try and scout out the hill giant camp. And next thing you know, I've got one and then two other players who are like, "Oh, I should go with you," or "Oh, I should probably try and scout out the thing too." I'm like, "Oh, I get it, but now you've just decided to go en masse
Yes.
to the Hill Giant camp instead of letting the Rangers scout ahead, or I'm going to check for secret doors or traps, and next thing you know, I've got everybody doing it. It's like, oh, I'd like to also check. I'd like
Now,
to also check.
My approach to that, and it's something I do make very clear when the game begins, is that I will let them, if a character says that they want to do something, I'll let them have a little bit of a pause and discussion and try and work out who is the best at doing that. And that character will have a role, and if applicable, if it's something that is that can be helped with, I'll let the others help them, and thus grant them advantage on the roll if playing 5th edition.
Yeah, that's
but
how
beyond that, they're not all rolling separately. Yeah, they're not all rolling separately. And there's quite a few things. There's quite a few things where I'll only allow them to help if they've got proficiency in the skill. If you haven't got proficiency, you can't help. Sorry.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will use the advantage thing as well. Now if I can head them off, but it still doesn't keep them from doing that real quick. Oh, I want to try it. I want to do it too. I want to do it too. And I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah. If they all pile on like that, I say, okay, whoever's got the best ability in that skill, roll with advantage. The rest of you are helping.
Yeah.
And if they turn around and say, but I want to roll dice, I say, well, okay, yeah. Yeah, they're their own niche, and we can find things that your character can do using their niche.
Yeah, the only time I will ever, I won't say ever, because sometimes I just don't catch it, but if a player can present to me a different way in which their character is going to try and accomplish the same thing, then I'll allow a different roll. Like, for example, if somebody's going to use nature to check something and another person is going to use survival, I might let them roll separately, depending on what they're saying they're looking
yes,
for.
If they use it well, you're rewarding two players then for using imagination and thinking separate of each other.
Exactly. Even if they're trying to ultimately achieve the same thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, even if they're trying to achieve the same thing, if they're coming about it by alternate means, I'm more than happy to let them do that. But yeah, just there's so many things where they just dogpile. But yeah, that's the big one in my head right now.
I just want to reply to. I need to oil my chair. Well, that fits in with my reply to this. There's a reason I don't oil my chair, because I am absolutely useless when it comes to repairing anything, doing anything constructive around the house, fixing anything, fixing a car, anything like that. So I'm usually the one who is getting in the way, and my wife tells me to get lost and to help her. Which is the way we tend to do things in this house, because I am absolutely pathetic when it comes to fixing anything. So, oh yes, Major's Musings has got one here. This comes under the heading of metagaming, I think, as well. If a player says their character is off doing something and something happens and they're not there, then they immediately say they've heard the commotion so they can come back.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to try and use that, at least have the courtesy to ask me, does my character hear this? Can I hear that going on in the study from where I am outside in the courtyard?
And then accept your answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's come up a lot of times, say, in like Call of Cthulhu, when they've got somebody watching the back door while everybody else is rifling through the crazy professor's house, and one of his experiments shows up. The guy outside's like, "Do I hear it?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know."
Make a listen check. There you go. That's
Make a listen
there's
check.
the mechanic.
Nobody's screamed yet, so
yeah, make it with a penalty dice. Yeah, there you go. Make a listen check with a penalty dice. If someone screams, then I'll let it with a bonus dice. There you go.
Yeah, I mean,
Mechanics are in Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, if it's a loud enough, like, or if there's a strong enough response, say on like a sanity fail or something like that, temporary bout of insanity, and that might alert them. But it all comes down. I definitely prefer if that they ask, and not only is it just polite, but it also engages more with the game that's going on. It engages with the world, and it shows an acceptance of the the verisimilitude of the world. Like, I am outside.
Yes. Let's say hello to Saxius. Hello, Saxius.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Glad you could join us. Omanal won't be with us today. He's got a dental appointment. I'm wondering if this is having his fangs sharpened.
You got to get your blood somehow.
Yes.
He's an owl, so
Either
maybe
that
he's
or
having
just
his beak sharpened.
Yeah, just got to make sure, got to stay ahead of the game of all these things. Man.
So we've both given a pet peeve, Saxius. Mine, the use of the word stealth. Elfbait, everyone piling on a skill. What's your pet peeve?
I've just demonstrated it.
Show
up in fucking time. I'm sorry, but where are you? Genuinely, I have had so many people I've taken aside and gone, listen, are you committed to this? Is there a serious thing going on? Is there real life situations, or do you have family emergencies, or do you have something else that's going on in real life? I will understand all of those because it's a game at the end of the day, and I understand real life comes first. But tell me the truth that you're just struggling to have computer issues.
So why were you 17 minutes late tonight? Why were you 17 minutes late? Tell us the truth.
Because I had other people I would rather talk to at that very moment. They needed my attention, and here I am. You get what you ask for.
Fair enough.
No, but yeah, I mean, you do make a good point. So many people seem so shy when it comes to just the basic consideration of communication.
Yeah,
if you're going to be late, be late. Let me know. Don't let me sit there for 30 minutes wondering where you are.
I've had people tell me 10 minutes before the game, I'm actually stuck in traffic. I'm sorry, I don't think I can make it tonight. That's I don't control the traffic, and he can't control the traffic. I've been in situations where I've had to leave work late, or since it's the weekend, or you're doing things previously. That's fair. That's understandable. I can understand that, but all I'm asking for is just tell me what is really happening. If I am consistently getting half-assed excuses like, oh yes, this is the or like, oh yeah, sorry, I lost track of time. It's like, well, the time doesn't change when we game. I am very strict about that. But what I just want to know is if you're going to be there, I just need a heads up, because I work on the assumption that all players are going to be there, and I will prepare all my games with the assumption this is how many people are there. If I don't have time to think about okay, this person isn't there, we don't have a fighter, okay, that means combat's going to be a little bit adjusted, okay, work through the number of games and then adjust from there. If I don't have time to do that, you're effectively just going to ruin the fun for everyone else, because I'm going to be sitting trying to distract people so that I can recalibrate what I need to do. And that's not what I'm here for. I would very much like you show up. Ideally, everyone, we've got 15, 20 minutes of where we talk absolute bullshit, and then we go into the game. And then off we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think both of you two so far have come up with sensible pet peeves. Ones that
I've got more. Don't worry.
They aren't remotely embarrassing. Here was me railing about about people using stealth as a verb.
Okay, well, I can jump in with one of those then. Something a little bit more personal and less valid.
Go on then.
I have a problem with people having too much fun. Air quotes, not like in actual fun, but like when they get just crazy, stupid, silly, it really shakes my focus on the as a DM, and I find myself often having to recover from that. So I mean, yes, I mean we all want to have fun at the table, but there's a point where my brain overloads on silliness and just general goofiness.
Oh, yeah.
And
There's a point where it breaks the immersion.
yeah, and it's and I feel bad whenever it happens, honestly, because ultimately I want people to be at that table or in that stream or whatever we're doing, and I want them laughing, I want them enjoying themselves, I want them to be having a good time. But and I'm not even adverse to having making jokes and having and cracking fun and stuff like that. But at a certain point, it just gets excessive. And then at that point, I just kind of sit back and wait for them to finish and gather my thoughts. Maybe add on a couple more ogres.
Yes. Become the horror DM and just batter them for a bit. Yeah. Halakar's got it absolutely right here. If, as far as I'm concerned, if you're late, then you'll be making me tea. Provide the DM with tea. Because I'm English. I have to sip at my slightly sweetened black tea during the session.
If we are going to talk rude player behavior,
rude player behavior
that annoyed us, and on the same line, we had a player who are in our regular gaming group, which mostly was board games and miniatures games when it first started, because most of the group was not role players. He would come in, and if he got a phone call, he would just take the call and walk out. He wouldn't say, "I'll be back in a minute." He wouldn't take his turn if it was his turn. He would just pick up the phone and walk out. And we're like, "Scott, you've known." We're like, I just dropped his name, but we're like, you've known us for decades, and you can't give us and when his kids were born, he just started bringing them to game night in their car seats without asking, "Hey guys, is it okay?" It's like, which nobody would have really said no, but courtesy, especially when you walk out on the phone and leave us to watch your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us were parents as well, so it was kind of the unwritten rule, and I'm guilty of passing my 1-year-old around the table at one point, but as the DM, it's like, I got to roll dice, hold the child.
Well, that's understandable, though. You got to roll the dice, and you don't want the 1-year-old to suddenly go.
Oh, yeah. Hey, there's a reason that one started playing role-playing games at age 3, though.
I only hear good parenting. No, so the phone at table. I know. So my normal stance is when we're gaming, phones off. If you like my current real life game, I have one player who works IT, and during the Saturdays, he's sometimes on call because that's just a requirement. He tells me I'm on call up until 8 o'clock, and we start games sometimes like 4 or 5. So there's going to be a couple of hours where if his phone buzzes or anything, it's work related, and I'm not going to fault him for that. Great. I know that this is the case. I know this is something that's going to happen. I know he's going to tell me ahead of time. I can understand and respect that because his work just has that kind of priority, especially because he's in a field of expertise. I'm not going to fault someone for that. What I am going to fault of is when they start getting out their text and go click, 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 click in the middle of an event that's taking place when other people are role-playing. That's when I go, and this is going away. Or
I'm going to make a little admission now. On Monday just gone, we shifted our gaming session to 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Mainly because one of the players has got a new puppy and he didn't want to be too late for the puppy because it's 9 weeks old and it has probably done its business everywhere in the house and they're trying to get it socialized. And on Monday morning, every year I take part in a fantasy NFL league with a load of other people I know online. They scheduled the draft for this season to be 8:30 on Monday night. And I was like, how am I going to do this? But as we're saying about giving people a forewarning, when I got to the session, I says, I have got my NFL online game draft at 8:30 tonight. And they said, that's absolutely fine. And I had my phone next to me with the draft going on. I had it turned down so it wasn't giving lots of loud notifications. And I didn't let it get in the way of any of my turns at the table. But I had my phone at the table. But there's a respectful way of doing it. It didn't interfere with anybody else.
Well, I've got something. Go on.
Good roster. I got a good roster as well, so I'm quite happy with that.
That's
anyway,
I want to ask for the two of you, like, what kind of like house or social rules do you bring with you when you are player or DM, when you host or when you go to other players that are hosting? Like, what are the rules that comes to that? Because I'm thinking specifically food, accommodation, drinks, and the likes. You know, who pays for what, who does what.
I generally, some of my players will bring their own stuff from time to time, but generally my expectation is whoever's hosting will supply basic drinks. By basic drinks, I mean glass of water, glass of squash, tea, coffee, something like that at suitable times. If you want something different, bring it yourself. In terms of food, you bring your own. Unless it's been specifically organized that we're going to have a takeaway as part of sometimes as part of the session. So we'll play from 6 till 8 o'clock. Then we'll have order a takeaway for 8 o'clock, have the takeaway. Then we'll play from 9 until about 11. There you go. And we might do that sometimes, but food is everyone's own responsibility. You sort your own food out. But drinks are generally provided by the host. Which I think is fair. It's fair.
Fair enough. Bring your own, yeah.
When we hosted, because I prefer to game at my house if I can, if I'm running the game. That way I have all my DM resources there. When we did that, my wife and I would provide the main course, and then everybody would coordinate to bring sides and drinks and the like. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. You know, we'd make a stew or spaghetti, or like sometimes go as extravagant as like we made a pot roast stew or something like that, or or curry. And then somebody would bring, oh, I found this mead, at the local shop, and somebody's got like 2 giant baguettes and the best spinach dip you've ever had, or whatever, and that was fun. I enjoyed that. Back when we were kids, somebody always had to provide the DM with a half rack of Coke.
Well, for me, the food, I mean, I sort of, with the food thing, I got into that habit and got into that expectation, and mainly because I got back into gaming regularly around 2012, 2013, which was around the time I took up judo, and I was trying to shift weight to get down to a specific fighting category. So I sort of said pretty much from the start, I'll sort my own food out, and it sort of just set everything along in that manner. I would almost always made sure I'd eat whatever I was going to eat before I went to a session, and then try and stay off snacks entirely throughout the session, because I couldn't afford to keep my gamer belly, really, because I needed to shift it. Because I never used to have a gamer belly. I've got one nowadays, but 5 years ago, I almost had a 6-pack. Almost, never quite.
And my problem is I had a 6-pack, and then another, and then another.
And it became a barrel.
Exactly. The reason why I ask is that in my experience of when I came from hosting or going to people who hosted, I have usually come across the bin bag man who would contribute nothing and would gladly consume everything other people brought.
The mooch.
The smooch, the bin bag, the person who would just be there like, oh, does anyone want this pizza? It's like, no, go ahead, you can take it. Because we knew he would just hoover up everything. And he just down to, the half drunk, glasses of Coke. That's probably good enough for him.
My approach is that I will nowadays. I will accept food if I'm offered it, but I don't expect it. Don't expect it. If someone brings a bag of a bag of dips and whatever and offers it around, yeah, I'll have a couple. But I don't expect it.
Yeah, it's nice, and of course, we'll always make exceptions because I've played with a pretty diverse spread of income brackets in the past too. And so not everybody can bring, and that's different though than just doesn't. Like, I remember playing with a guy who probably had the best job out of all of us and managed to almost bring nothing except for what he would eat. It's like, dude, the guy who's working, retail just brought like 5 pizzas. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
It's just like, if it is, at least in my experience, because to me it is like it's a social event. It's something where everyone comes in, we contribute, not just for the game, but for the atmosphere. Especially if it's real life, I take the real life games very serious in the sense of it's almost like a sacred tradition for me that we must do things in order to make this a good experience, from food, general laughter, good company, good manners, we sit there and we go like, oh, this is good, we like this, I like this, sitting around the table and rolling the dice.
Does it depend on what time of day you're playing, though? Do you tend to start games fairly early and play through a general meal time?
So I have usually either timed it around periods where we would either have sort of like late lunch or towards, at least in my current real life game, spend time so that we would meet a couple of hours before 5-6 o'clock, and then at that point we would then have food, because to me, again, like I said, to me it's a big cultural, it's almost like a tradition that we have to eat, as a group together, that this is what I sort of want to bring in.
We would open with dinner. We would open with dinner and then kind of just snack on the remains throughout the rest of game. Like everybody gets a plate and.
A while back, I did used to play with a Saturday afternoon group, and the host often provided a few bits and pieces. Nothing over the top, but just a few bits and pieces. But almost always nowadays, we never start sessions till about 7 o'clock. We don't play at weekends. We play on a Monday night at the moment, so we get, and the start time is pretty much almost always as soon as you can get there after work. So
it's different when you're looking at a weekday, because most people are already coming back. They work from 9 to 5 and so on. So that's what you're sort of looking at. I mean, I've usually gone for the weekends, but then again, most of my games have gone across multiple time zones. So while I'll be sitting here comfortably at 6-7 o'clock UK time, I'll have other people being like, oh yeah, I've just had my lunch, or other people going like, it's almost midnight but I'm ready to game.
Yes, of course, that's the thing with online gaming, isn't it? So
go on.
I was wondering about next silly pet peeve. I'm going to come up with one, and that is something that has been part of D&D since, I would say, about the 3rd edition era. And that, again, it's the terminology as well. I hate the idea and the practice of dipping.
Oh, dipping into classes?
Yes. I'll take a 1 level dip at that level, and I'll take another 1 level dip at that level. And it's like, I even hate the way they describe it. It's just
I just see it as I have a hard time getting peeved about that one because honestly, to me it's just using the rules to make the character you want. You know,
I prefer to use the game world to make the character as the first and foremost thing. And if a player is genuinely role playing something in a manner where taking a level of something makes sense in terms of experiences in the world and people they've met, then yeah, okay, but only in those situations.
yeah, maybe it's just my experience where I haven't really run into people who are just dipping around to just for the mechanical advantage, even if the players in my groups, even if they have they're looking for the mechanics, they will usually come to me and go, okay, I would like my character to learn magic, and take a few levels in wizard, can you have my character run into something that he can learn that from? They'll talk to me about it as an in-game change. And even like on my last character I ran with my battle master, I took one level of thief just to get some other combat moves that fit his sword fighter theme. His kind of agile dueling sword fighter kind of a theme. And that's just because I figured backstab would make a really cool killing blow kind of thing for a swordsman to have. And yeah,
if you've been playing him as that sort of sword fighter, yeah, that is fair enough. And just say hello, Mike, 2 mics, and Squirrel Hermit's joined us as well. One of the mics is Michael Bailey. Hello, Bailey. He's our DM on a Monday at the moment. Go on then. What's your pet peeve, Mike? Go on, Mike, Mr. Bailey. Give us that pet peeve. You can come on. Oh, I was going to say you can come online and tell us, but he's at work on a night shift.
Just quickly dipping in for a second to give you a pet peeve.
Yeah. And I guess my commentary there is going to irritate the other Mike because I was talking about my character's build, whereas I had envisioned him from the very beginning as this trained, like classically trained, went to a sword school, noble sword school kind of guy. And yes, I built him as a battle master because that reflected that. And, having a level in thief and getting that backstab ability and like that disengage ability and stuff like that was very much also in keeping with that fleet-footed, swordsman. So yes, I dipped into a class to reinforce my build. There, I've offended everybody.
Mike has sort of preempted me a little bit here because my third one was going to be the idea of characters being built. That was my third pet peeve for tonight. The idea of talking about your character as a build. It's like Lego. Your character is not Lego. Your character is a character.
Saxis is shaking his head.
I do have to step in here, though. Have you ever played with Lego miniatures for your D&D tokens? I mean, at that point, your character is a Lego figure.
Yes.
Just
back in the day, we would build whole dungeons out of Lego and run miniatures through them.
This man right here is sophisticated and advanced. John, you must get up to his level.
Look, you pass it.
No, I do have another peeve that is for me is somehow that player who always has some dissenting take on any decision that faces the party, no matter what it is. Everybody wants to go left. He's like, well, what about right? Everybody wants to go up the hill. He's like, well, what about like under the gully? We could go through the main gate. Well, what about going through the sewers instead? There's always that guy who's always, no matter how clear. I even have a story for this because I always have a story. Third edition game.
I was going to say, can you give us that story? Because Mike's probably on his break at work.
Yeah, Mike, go for it.
So I'm just going to put Mike's comment in here. So we can deal with it while he's available, and then we'll come back to your story.
Nah, it's fine.
Right. Mike, yeah, not playing ability scores. A barbarian with 6. For me, this depends on the type of game you're playing. If you're playing a long-term campaign where you're getting into the characters, absolutely, you play your ability scores. Your ability scores are part of why your character is who they are. They've helped define the experiences your character has had. Why is your character stupid? What is it that's wrong with you that makes you uncharismatic? What happened to you to give you a terrible dexterity? Are you just just naturally clumsy? And so on. They provide you with options. If we're just playing a one-shot, for example, Tomb of Horrors, which is designed to test the players, then I couldn't give a rat's ass about playing your ability scores in that instance, because of the way the adventure is designed. But if you're playing a campaign, then yes, you have to take into account your character stats. Yeah. If you're going to make your character stupid, then sorry, you are not going to be the one who's coming up with all the strategies.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go that way, though, you have to remember that it plays both ways. And this is where I think some of the imbalance in the perception of characters and stats and what they can do comes from throughout the history of the game. The big argument of why can't I just use an intelligence check to solve the riddle? To a degree, I can understand that argument, because not everybody's necessarily the player's not necessarily going to have the same intelligence 18 as his wizard character, and just like with fighter characters, the DM's not like, all right, well, now you have to engage me in 3 rounds of actual melee combat to get through this goblin fight.
The point there, though, is you can still act in an intelligent manner.
Yes,
you can portray that character as if they're intelligent without necessarily being always the one who solves things.
There's still a point, though, where you look at it and go, what can you really do? Because I've been in games where it's like, oh, roll 3d6 down the line, you get what you get, and I got 3 intelligence.
There's no way you're going to play 3 intelligence.
I can't play 3 intelligence because you are actually looking at a person who is less intelligent. No, they're less intelligent than a dog. You're looking at the point of where...
this is going to be one of my later pet peeves, but come on then.
Yeah, but you're looking at a character that is just like, you have a statistic where you are going to... I mean, the one time I've done it, I just went, the guy can't talk. He is that unintelligible. He genuinely has not been able to form the mental capacity to speak.
In cases like that, I really actually do appreciate a DM who will do this, and I try to do this as a DM, where I will sort of offer some forced feedback on the players using their abilities. They're playing above their ability score. It's like, when the player with the 3 intelligence, for example, wants to go ahead and have his character try and figure something out, I will give the player skewed information, and it's like, okay, this is what you've determined from this, because there's no way, like Sax is saying, it's really difficult for a lot of people to play that super low intelligence. It's a lot easier to imagine being super buff.
I mean, I know why Mike's brought this one up, because he has his comment afterwards. I was pretty proud of my Godfrey. He played a paladin called Sir Godfrey Allmight. Godfrey was the most well-meaning and kind-hearted of characters. He was true to his paladin ideals. He also had an intelligence of about 5 or 6, and Mike portrayed him as being very dense, not really cottoning on to what people are getting at. He fell for things. He was gullible. He fell for things very easily, and he did a really good job. But he always made sure he stayed useful. He was always the knight in shining armor. But he was the stupid, but in a nice way, and disrupt the game. Anyhow,
okay.
I mean, playing characters with really high intelligence. I mean, I don't mind people making an intelligence check to try and solve something, but it won't solve it. It would more than likely just give them a bit of a clue to help them along.
So here's the next one, though. Still staying on stats. Charisma. You can still have people who. I mean, I have a player who played the Bard. Very good. Intelligence was around the 16th. That's a very outgoing personality. The player himself is definitely not as forward or as confident and so on. So I would often, as the DM, just say, "Tell me what your character wants to say. I will translate that because of your stat." At that point, that's where it would be a penalty to force that player to role play out the whole thing, because they don't have 16 intelligence in real life, but they want to be that face character. They want to be out there. So it was important for me to establish, well, what is your character? Okay, you're playing a half elf. They are the equivalent of a 16-year-old. They have got that boyish charms. They've got that looks of innocence. People look at you and go like, it's a kid. Come on, just humor him. That was what I told him, how I was perceiving his charisma, and then that helped him understand how to.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Narrative roleplay is good.
If they don't have to say exactly, if they're not very good, they have to say exactly what they're saying in the conversation or actually role play out the conversation. But they can say things like, I would like to be nice to this shopkeeper, offer to help around the shop, or offer, and they can describe what a charismatic person would do. I would like to try and influence the people in the room to believe my point of view by explaining it in a manner that softens the potential damage or something like that. They don't actually have to do roleplay. They can describe something.
It's more describing at that point. It's not the whole like putting on an act and so on. But my point is though that you're still going to have players, and there's still going to be situations where you look at the player, the person, or what they're trying to play as, and turn around and go like, well, you don't have this. I mean, another example is if we are sticking with intelligence, or even just like wisdom, like the wisdom of experience and just the know-how of life. If you have a high wisdom, for example, and the player in real life might not have it, then I almost have to at times take my son and go like, hint, hint, this is not how the real life goes.
But that's our job as experienced DMs, to help players in that sort of manner.
Yeah, I think narration really factors into that a lot too. If the guy's got a low wisdom and he's like playing, he's just going to blunder, or he's got a high wisdom, let's say, and he's going to blunder through something. And you're like, you can narrate, you get a bad feeling about this, or it occurs to you that, and you can do that with a high intelligence person too. You can have them be more insightful, or, more, I don't know. It's a really hard one for me to expect cerebral characters to play up to their stats and abilities when martial characters and more physical characters really don't have to, because describing physicality is so much easier than describing.
Of course.
And
sometimes I would say that these intelligent or high charisma characters are the sort of character classes that really do lend themselves towards more experienced players in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would agree there. Sorry, RL is real life is distracting me for a second. Continue.
No worries. I'm going to actually come on now I'm going to jump in with a little reaction to what Sax just said a few minutes ago. I would argue that a character with a human with 3 intelligence is not more stupid than a dog, even if the dog stats say that they have 4 intelligence, because the dog stats only exist as a guide for the DM in terms of mechanics and to give them a general idea of how that creature will act. I don't believe in terms of pure intelligence that player characters are on the same scale as monsters. For me, a character with 3 intelligence can speak, is capable of very basic day-to-day simple logic, but will just not retain information. Probably might learn to read the odd letter or odd number, but is terrible at adding them up. Can't read anything remotely complicated, and certainly can't write it. But and speech will be often dull and simple monosyllabic, but the speech will be there.
I look at the dog. I see how many commands a dog can be trained with, and that's more intelligent than a human with free intelligence. Meaning you're looking, but this is where I'm going at it from. You're looking at the ability to retain information, not just like in terms of their environment, but also in terms of like how to function. There's the wisdom, which is going to be the animal instincts, and then you're going to have the which the human can still have quite a good amount of, but the intelligence is then going to be the ability to process the logic that's going to be behind it and so on. You're looking at this just basically being down towards you're less human in terms of like it's the civilization that you would see around you. You're looking at someone that's almost more animalistic in my head, because you're literally not driven by a sense of reason or a higher form of thinking. You're looking at almost a caveman at this point.
Oh yeah, you can be driven by instinct, but I wouldn't deny that character the ability to speak just because a dog can't speak.
But the speech, like, again, we're looking at speech in the sense of like, yeah, they might be speaking in grunts and gravels and what have you, occasional odd word here and there, but you're not looking.
Drink.
You're looking at that kind of character, and frankly, I would be sick and tired of playing that character. If he has, it's just like at that point, like, what are you playing? Like, it's this equivalent of like rolling a 4 in your charisma. You're going to be a horrible person when you're in society. Just when you're dealing with other people, like people who can't, it's going to be difficult coping with you or role playing that out. It's going to have massive penalties, not just for yourself, but for the group. And that's where, like, this is just the way I think when I play. I look at the character, go like, what contributions does this piece of paper bring to the overarching fun that is this group? Because we must have fun. It is the objective of every game to have fun. But the spreadsheet says so, and the DM says so.
It can certainly be disruptive to group dynamics. I would agree there. And a low charisma. I mean, if you were to play a low charisma very well, then that would be very, very disruptive to even a basic shopping trip, or going to go, or because you might be very uncharismatic because you're simply a shrinking violet, and but you could also be very uncharismatic because you are just blunt and you just keep putting your foot in and weighing in where your opinions really aren't needed. You can be rude. You can be very dense when it comes to other people's reactions, but you can also have very, very low willpower as if you're uncharismatic, very low strength of your own character. So you can be extremely nervous. Now, I'd see that as being quite interesting. A character who's totally unsure of themselves, because that fits under the charisma description as well.
It's down to the pitch that you're going to give the DM, but also in a way the group as well. Because when you're going to be coming in with a character that is going to have such an obvious drawback to them, it's personally the last thing I want to do as a player is to throw this on anyone. Ergo, it's down to the communication of the player and so on. But then again, as we can tell here, there's different communications or different interpretations of how the stats translates into the character sheet. So that's again where you've got to, as a player, do your duty and check with your DM.
Yes, and DM do your duty and give the expectations to the player.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I did to my real life group, and they all went high charisma orientated, knowing which is social encounters. We're all running around with 14 minimum charisma. We're fucking fabulous. Just An entire group, 14 minimum charisma. It's just, I can't. No one hates you. You're pretty chill.
You're the sort of group of lads who'll walk into a bar, and within 10 minutes, there'll be a group of girls nearby.
It's just that, or they just make friends everywhere they go. Like they have a hard time being socially disliked unless they really go out of their way to do something.
One of the hardest low charisma characters I ever had to play was, a character of good breeding and good upbringing and everything, who should know better and has proper manners and everything, who's still also not very charismatic or likable. So I basically just played him as coming across as so noble that he was just off-putting.
What? Didn't one go to university? Oh, that's such a shame. Oh, poor
Or
peasant.
they'd be sitting there in the inn, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a wonderful stew," and he'd go off, "Oh yes, but this is nothing compared to what the cooks back home would prepare with."
Or barmaid, please take this stew back. It needs more pepper. No, I insist.
We're very enamored by my character's little pouch of spices from his homeland that he insisted on putting everything they ate while adventuring, because everything was the wrong flavor profile. So
I have a fun duo in my real life group where it is a noble lady who plays the swashbuckler and a paladin of the goddess of family, fertility, unions, and that sort of thing. They bicker back and forth like an aunt and niece about who knows best. The young teenage daughter or teenage niece and the experienced mother, mature mother, sort of going back and forth about what life is meant to be about. And it's just completely opposite views, but it is like the entire group will just lean back and go, popcorn time. They're at each other's throat again.
As long
because
as people are enjoying it.
Oh God, they love it. Because there's nothing more hilarious for them is to just see the spoiled brat suddenly get lectured by the experienced what's it called, paladins, and go like, no, this is not how the world works. And he goes, but money. We have money. We can get away with these things. This is a part of being privileged. It's like, no, you can't just say this. No, you have to be humble. You have to be blah blah blah.
maybe back home where you had the authority, you could get away with it.
No. Anyways, back on track.
I'm going to bring in this. I think this is quite a pertinent one. I'm very much in agreement with the Duralumin here, and I have tried to train my players to do this sort of thing. They do occasionally drift, but I want to hear a description of what the player character is doing, and I'll decide. I have had occasions when I've had someone say, "Oh, can I make a perception check?" And I'm like, I just remind her, say, I've already made the roll for you and narrated the room assuming you were doing that. And that's quite often how I'll handle something like that.
That is why I like passive perception in 5e, because if they didn't specifically say that they were they were actively looking around, then I will give them a description based on what everybody's passive perception scores are. It's like,
Yeah. I will actually. I often make a basic assumption that they are trying to be alert. It's just a standard adventuring mode that they're going to be alert, and I will make rolls in the background quite a lot, mostly when I'm playing online, and tell the players what they see based on those rolls.
For me, it's pretty circumstantial. I mean, there's clearly going to be cases where the adventurers aren't going to be on high alert adventure mode, like walking around their hometown or whatever.
And I'm not afraid to tell people the roles sometimes as well. I mean, I walk into a room, I'll give them a really intricate description and even mention things that would would be hidden, and I'll just off the cuff just say, yeah, you rolled a 20 on your perception, so don't it's that sort of, I don't mind saying things like that.
Although I do have to apply one bit of real world experience when it comes to that, and after a certain level, I tend to like change things because I grew up around a ton of Vietnam vets, and those guys noticed everything, and they were always on alert, even when they were sitting down and having a beer. Just because it was ingrained in them. So after a few levels of adventuring and having everything try to kill you, I can excuse the player characters of being a little bit more wired.
Yes.
Yes.
No, but I agree. Like, you got to scale this as well because, yeah, your character might only have been out adventuring for like 3 or 4 months, but in those 3 or 4 months, they faced 30 goblins who used horde tactics against them, and they had to learn how to either throw everything they had to survive or die. They have faced organized hobgoblin attacks. They have gone toe to toe with the brutes of ogres. And they might even have run into an encounter or two of creatures where they went, that's not for us to deal with, and run. And they've gained experience from that. At that point, yeah, you're looking at some players or characters that are much more wide, much more alert. So I try to show that, like you said, have that be. But I also try to scale that with like how they can use like minor powers, like detect magic and so on. They can get more information because they learn more. They start to observe more. They can pick up more things.
Very much the actual unwritten rules of experience. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, have either of you two got a particularly embarrassing peeve that you want to share with us? Something that
What did we do? What did we do?
Anything that you shouldn't be annoyed by, but does annoy you. Silly. It can be
That's a hard one.
It can be a bit like me with the language.
So, if we're having an online game and there's real life going on around you, you mute yourself. Or I will mute you. And I mean, I will mute you for everyone to hear. And if you then start getting a little bit angry that I decided to server mute you, I will get much angrier because I don't want to hear you talk to your mother or having a discussion with your sister or any of these other things. You can mute yourself, you can leave the chat, you can do something else. But I like online games where we aren't around, where there isn't a dedicated focus towards the game, I really have a shorter fuse with certain things that cause disruption throughout the entire game. If you're in a noisy environment, you have to know that you're in a noisy environment, or you're being told you're in a noisy environment. You've got to learn how to either do press to speak, or what's it called? Just be moderating your own volume. Like, I don't know how to really put it. It annoys me when I suddenly hear someone coughing into the microphone and my ears are bleeding because you decide to shove your microphone into your mouth while you coughed.
One of the worst ones in that regard is, especially in the kind of unavoidable in face-to-face play, but very much avoidable in online play, is if you were eating, mute yourself, please. If you're sitting there chewing and I can hear you, but the one that gets me, and this is either around the table or online, is mumblers. If you were sitting across the table from me, because when we played at the table the last time, it was a 4x4 gaming table, like designed for miniatures gaming, but is literally a square. Me and 4 players around it, right? And we had one player who would sit to my left, and I could not hear him talking to me half the time. I'm like, and what was amazing is I know he's a trained vocalist. I'm like, like, why? And then when we play online, I'm constantly having what was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. And you have so much control over your volume sensitivity, your mic sensitivity, and your speakers, your microphone is right there next to your mouth. Mumbling is just one of those, like, please enunciate, please project. You know, I mean, I get it if you're a quiet person, but
Yeah,
that's
some
different.
people lose their shyness, isn't there? And try and bring them out of their shell a little bit. And I like at the table, I'll try and bring people out of their shell by being quite a vocal and demonstrative DM, and I'll do things that normal people might feel embarrassed by, to show that I'm not remotely embarrassed by them. So come on, open up.
Oh yeah, I very much make a distinction between people who are shy and just people who mumble, because I'm an introvert. My kid is very much introverted, and I get that. But yeah, if you are looking at me and talking to me and sitting a foot and a half to 2 feet to my left and I can't hear you, there's a problem.
Yep. I'm just going to say hello to a few more people who've joined us. Hello, Innocent Smith. Hello, Ernie, long-time supporter of the channel. Hello, Michael. Another Michael. We are inundated with Michaels tonight. And we've got. I'm sure I saw somebody else appear. No, maybe not. If I've missed you, I do apologise. I'm trying to keep up with chat a lot better than usual, and I'm sort of succeeding. Sort of. Ah, yes. I don't think this is too absurd because my players do troll me a little bit when we play online by picking images for their characters which they know will annoy me or they think are funny. In fact, hello, Jeb. In fact, Mr. Bailey, who was on earlier, is playing a character with a completely inappropriate avatar, and he did it on purpose just to wind me up.
There's a peeve: people who come up with just blatantly dumb names for their characters. I mean, I understand if your character's name is blah, but if you come to me with a character, to use the classic biggest dickus, and that's your character's name, I'm like, no.
What you have against Frederick Longbottoms? Like, what is wrong with that?
Well, that's not all that goofy of a name. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean,
we had a female dwarf called Fiona from Shrek.
I'd almost let that go. Because
I did let it go.
I not that I'm ever going to tell anybody not to name their character whatever they want, but there's just that internal the eye roll.
I had one of my players is playing it's a specific race in Pathfinder who are blue, very Chinese, very Eastern inspired, got very much Chinese, Korean names, and all about higher understanding, meditation. He names him Craig and makes him into such a pyromantic, workaholic character who will not for the life of him stop talking, even when it will get him killed. The complete antithesis to what his entire heritage is meant to be bringing forth to him. And it's an ongoing joke in my campaign that till this day I have not recovered from the fact that we've got Craig amongst all of these fantasy characters. There's then just Craig,
like
just Craig,
like Craig from accounting.
Yeah, it's just like there's just like you've got Ibudan, Batar, Marius, God, Ignacio de la Vosa and Craig.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I haven't run into that fortunately for a long time, but yeah, we used to have like an adventuring group back when we were kids, and there was my character Shagon Icehawk, right? The overly dramatic hero name, right? And then whatever Green Sleeves and Thor Barden, whatever obvious fantasy names, and then one dude's like, and I'm Bogey the fighter. Like,
Yes.
But these days, I do try to play my own characters more with like, oh, this is Richard, this is John, this is Bernard, names of people of the earth. Because I usually go with, oh, this guy's a peasant, this is a peasant, this is another peasant. Why is she adventuring? Oh, money. Got a daughter that's gonna get married. I'm bored. I was meant to retire, but my funding kind of got lost by the banks, so here I am, literally just here to get the retirement money.
I think if you've got like a character with a peasant background, having a peasant, very, very simple humdrum name is absolutely fine.
Mm.
Just Michael Stronghold doesn't big pet peeve. Trying to hog the never bothering to learn the mechanics. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in game, but in terms of balanced spotlight. As DM, I try to control the spotlight as much as possible by putting people in the spotlight at certain times and taking away the spotlight at other times. So, yeah, characters who try to hog it can be a pain in the backside. But I think with that, you've just got to sort of impose yourself as a DM and make a point of moving that spotlight around and make a point of moving it off the hoggers from time to time. Yeah, I mean, people play the way they like and play the way they enjoy the game, so they'll probably still have a little bit more spotlight time than someone who isn't putting themselves forward as much, but it's about giving them all the opportunity to be in the spotlight. But not bothering to learn their character mechanics, yeah, that's a pain in the backside. And I think that's made worse nowadays by all these technical wizardry that we have online helping people with the character sheets and character creation.
yeah, it's a darn shame that us old guys never had to deal with things that didn't exist. So one peeve that bugs me, honestly, and this is actually in the category of DM as player advocate, player cheerleader, is players who come to me with a great character idea and then play it absolutely flat and without engaging in any of the opportunities that they built into their character and presented to me. I had in my 3-5 game, we had one guy comes up with this really cool background. I mean, almost one of those backgrounds where you're like, this is maybe a little too much. And when we got to the table, he was the most blasé, I hit it with my sword kind of a character.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you bother writing that background and giving me all that cool stuff to work with if you're just gonna be like, and I hit it with my sword?
I'm going to take this opportunity now. We've got 24 people in chat watch,
Wow.
whatever, to because that is good. I am running a game of Call of Cthulhu tomorrow night at 7 p.m. UK time. Looks like I've got 3 confirmed players at the moment. There is room for a couple more. I've got a couple of maybes, but there are 2 more characters available, and it would be great if I can get if we can have all 5 characters being played. It can be played fine with 3, but it is the adventure that I gave 10 out of 10 to, the first adventure that I ever gave 10 out of 10 to on my channel. So if you'd like to come along and play that, you're more than welcome. It'll be UK time, 7 p.m. till about 11 p.m. tomorrow. So I'm just going to get that out there and shill for my game.
That's it. Complete 0 out of 10. This stream's gone completely commercial. All the ads. Self-promotion rampant.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
it's a
nothing to be.
pay-for-play game. I'm not. You don't even have to create a character. I've done it all. I've done all the character creation. So you only got to turn up and play the character you're given. That's it. Anyway, having yes, Major's Musings is playing. Yes, I have got fleshed out pre-gens, and there is a reason why you just start with a character sheet and nothing on it. I don't want to go into any more details. And don't watch my review of that adventure. Because there are spoilers in it. There are spoilers in the review, so don't watch the review. Anyway, where were we? Yeah.
Pet peeves.
Grumpy old Slan. There we go. It's a darn shame that us old guys didn't have to deal with things that didn't exist. It is indeed t-shirt worthy. It's a good signature.
Right. It's a pet peeve that when players come in and basically go like, here is what's it called? I don't mind when players come in with a backstory to begin with. What I do mind is that they expect me to just take what they write and then insert it into my campaigns. Like, it's a pet peeve of mine. Now, I don't usually sort of, say anything harsh back to them. I just remind them that I make the games and the games create a life of their own when it's done right. Yeah. Where it becomes a visible tick of mine is when a player says, according to my backstory, your backstory was from session 1 till now. That's as far as I'm concerned. You are not some... You might write yourself as a legendary this or that, but like, no, you're level 1. You are level 1 for a reason. Like, you can give some inspiration for things, but you're not going to come into this game with grand feats that's been done ahead of time, unless we're starting out like level 5, 6, or 7, at a D&D 5th edition. Then it's easier to justify these things. But the majority of the time, like, it's about what we've done. It's just a pet peeve that is like, this work of fiction takes precedent over the enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, that's one of those things I'll try to nip in the bud. It's like if somebody comes to me with that backstory that's already has them as a hero, I'm like, no, you're not a hero yet. You're level 1. You may be a hero within 5 miles of your home village because you got rid of that angry bull that one time, or but yeah.
And I think one of my pet peeves is apt for this moment. I cannot stand starting a long-term game with characters that are not total beginners. I will never start a campaign at level 4 or 5 or 6 or anything like that. All characters in my games, as if they're going to be player characters, if they're going to be long-term characters in the game, and I mean playable by the players, I mean NPC is different, they will always begin at first level, because I want them to go through that learning phase at the start. I personally can't get into a character that I haven't created from the beginning.
Yeah, I've run plenty of campaigns at higher levels, but that's also with people I've been playing with for a long time and know their play styles, and they're often playing characters that are classes that I know that they know well. It's, or maybe we're up there in the campaign and I don't necessarily want to have a level 1 tagging along with everybody else. So, yeah. Sometimes I just don't want to go through the first 5 levels, and I just want to get into the more robust adventuring. So
I'm just going to, for anyone who does want to play tomorrow, you will need Discord, and this is the link. There we go. That's a Discord event link. Anyhow. Innocent Smith says a pet peeve is when players want to use character options from supplements and third-party materials because they feel too limited by the player's handbook, but they've never actually played the player's handbook. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
Subset of that is the character butterfly who wants to make a new character for every new thing he reads.
Yes.
It's just
Yes. It
There's
is.
this great magic class in this new book. Can I restat my wizard to be this guy, this class instead?
Yeah, I mean, we all have ideas of characters we want to play, but yeah, at least play a character for a significant length of time. And when you do start playing a game, learn to walk before attempting to run. Always go in with the basics. And
I'm guilty of that. I am the type of person who starts homebrewing like right after my first read through on a game, no matter what it is, because my brain just immediately explodes with all these other ideas that I didn't see in print. So I'm guilty there.
Right. I'm going to try and rile chat up now. One of my pet peeves is, I'm going to use an example for this one. Playing UK1, Beyond the Crystal Cave. The party are going through the garden, and they encounter a group of half men, half beasts, dancing merrily, playing their pipes, frolicking in the garden. And one of my players, and remember, we're English, one of my players shouts out, "Satyrs." I'm looking at him like, what? What? And he's like, "Satyrs." I'm looking at him blankly, what? And he's, like in Lion the Witch of the Wardrobe, Mr. Tumnus. I'm like, oh, you mean satyrs? You've learned that pronunciation from an American film. American pronunciations. I get unreasonably annoyed by some American pronunciations. I will admit that now. It's very silly. So, chat. Yes, most of you talk American.
all right.
Tell me I'm an idiot.
I will.
To paraphrase something I said earlier, go ahead, Sax. Go ahead.
I'm Danish, and I speak very American English, at least as often as I can, because there is nothing that is more fun for me than to watch my British English teaching wife just slowly turn her head towards me as she looks at me to very condescendingly enunciate for me, like I am a 5-year-old, how to properly speak, only for me to smile wildly and repeat it in the worst way I possibly can. And this will go on for a little bit. I don't care. I will say it the American way. And I will say much worse responses.
I'm with your wife on this one. You deserve it for trying.
I don't care.
Huh.
I don't
it's
care.
Almost like language changes over time.
Oh, yeah, it's almost like some places it evolves and just becomes better. It's
unless you're coming at me with Anglo-Saxon English or Old English, you don't get to claim the proper way to speak English.
No, I'm with you, Elf. Like, you broke away. You improved the way that the language was meant to be spoken.
What? If we're on the subject of language,
they did not improve it.
Pet peeve directed at my English friend here. when Brits get grumpy at Americans for using words that were invented by the English but have fallen out of fashion. And we're like, i.e., soccer versus football, aluminium versus aluminum,
dice,
stuff like that. Where you guys created the word, we just never actually stopped using it. Like, we call it soccer because that's where we got it from, you guys. And you guys, when they first found out or named aluminum, they named it aluminum. And then you guys decided it had to be aluminium. NITs, of course.
I think aluminum was the first, wasn't it?
No, aluminum. The guy who actually named it called it aluminum.
But I know they argued.
I'm just
argued about.
I'm just rattling a chain there.
Coming back to the pet peeves.
Yes. Well, we're talking about pet peeves, aren't we?
We are talking about pet peeves, although this one is getting maybe a little bit too focused. So allow me to do my job and remind us all to go back into line. That's what I'm here for.
Go on,
anyway, all right. So the pet peeve is when someone thinks that one skill, one role, or one something can just solve, be the solution to everything. You are encountering some form of magic. Can I roll Arcana? Well, you can roll parts of it, yeah. Okay, I want to know everything about it. It's like, I rolled 20. I got a natural 20. Okay, well, it is magic, but you need to study it further. You can't do it in this short of a time. You need to do this, and this. It's like, yeah, but I rolled this. Or the moment that there's a murder or something, I want to use Arcana to see if there's magic in the area. What? Okay. I've had some who seems to just hyper focus on. Sorry, go on.
Using skill rolls.
Yes, but like they usually aim for their strongest skill. They usually aim for the same set of skills, and it's just like they try to treat every situation as a hammer, as a nail, using their own method as a. Yeah, thank you, mate. Yes, you're spot on right. But I've developed this.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, Saxius, I always find it amusing to have a little fun and remember that if they're using, say, Arcana, which is a very academic approach towards whatever they're trying to get, they may get incorrect or erroneous, incomplete information based on what that area of knowledge knows. They're going to get the magical explanation for something, but it may not be the real reason. And because I run into that too all the time. It's like, there's runes on that column. Can I make an Arcana check to see if I can read them? That they're runes. They're not magical runes. They're in another language.
I think this one might set you off, Saxius, because I know you tweak things, and you're the sort of DM who gladly players who object to the monster because that's not how it is in the book.
I don't have my cup here right now, but I usually get out a cup and I lean as close as I can so I can collect their tears. They're very, very, very fruitful for when this comes around. And in a serious sense, I don't understand the whole thing of you have to use it by the book. I mean, I've done games that were by the book with all the monsters, and it's fun, don't get me wrong. There are times where I amend it because it's also fun to have a challenge, and suddenly you're facing something that is not normal. But when a player tries to hold me to standard stuff like this is a monster and so on, it's just like, I'm sorry, do you not understand what this game is? Do you not understand how this works? What are you going to do when I make you fight NPC adventurers? There's no stats for that, which means I have to sit down and make characters that you fight. What are you gonna do then? Because then I can be just as evil as you guys are.
See, 5th edition tried to even take that away with standard character class types in the monster manual. Standard mages and they have tried to standardize all of that, and I get that some DMs want to use a standard version. They're simple, but I like to personalize things as well. I have to admit, I do like to make changes. As far as I'm concerned, if you go into a goblin lair, there will be larger goblins who work in the smith will be wielding hammers. They won't be using short swords for the standard stats. They will be a bit larger. They might be wearing a chainmail jerkin and hitting you with a hammer instead, and be a bit stronger. I won't change any of the XP values or anything because I can't be bothered. But I will make goblin sergeants, and I'll make them myself, and they might be wearing better armor as well, and maybe a bigger weapon. They might be a bit more intelligent.
I will.
And making those.
Oh, go on. Go on.
And making them just makes the lair feel more like a living environment.
No, I agree. You definitely should be doing that. Something I like to do is to take the Beholder and completely change how the eyes work. The central eye is not the dispel eye anymore. Oh no, that's gonna be something else. Why? Because it's an aberration. Screw your rules. Screw your laws of nature. This thing is from the nightmare realm. I will do what I want. And no two beholders will ever be the same. They will not adhere to the same rules. They will have completely different methodologies. I might even just turn it around and they will spit their teeth at you and grow them back at a frightening rate. Why? Because I can. And welcome to the realms of nightmares. Players will lose their mind when that happens. And it's... it's also down for like... The pet peeve is when a player thinks that they know how the game is meant to be run by me. I have a style. I make that style abundantly clear. Every time I start a group, I make them very, very aware of what I am like as a DM, what my style is like, what I expect from the players, what they should be expecting from me, what they can do, and what I won't allow. Because that's important for establishing, because that way many of my pet peeves are addressed. Many of my pet peeves are sort of, acknowledged, and players will also have a chance for them to turn around and say, yeah, here are some things that we would expect from you as well, Oscar, because it's a two-way street. I don't see the point of me walking in there and go like, here's what I want to play, here's how you have to behave. You either meet the criteria or you don't. That's more draining for me than I would ever want to do. It's not fun. And yeah,
while we're on about monster stat blocks, I hate that term as well, stat block.
But it is statistics.
Yes,
you are looking at statistics. That is what it is. It's just shortations of the statistics of the chances to hit, the statistics of its hit points or health or whatever the hell you want to call it.
It's just stat block. I just call them stats, monster stats. They are. That's enough.
Yeah.
But one of my silly pet peeves, and it's something that's it's in 5th edition. If you open up the monster manual and you look at the various things it can do, it will say something like goblin, short sword, damage 5 brackets 1d6 plus 2. They put the dice and the modifier in brackets, and they put the average damage first.
This is 5th edition.
Yeah. Now I remember people arguing in the early days of 5th edition that the default should be that average damage, and that using the dice option is the This was a Reddit argument. You know what Reddit's like, and that it should be optional. It's optional to use the dice. It really, really annoyed me that they put it that way around. If you're going to put the average in there, put 1d6 plus 2 brackets average 5, so that it demonstrates the standard for people who are new to the game, that the standard way of doing it is to roll the dice, rather than someone who's new to the game for the first time sees the average first.
I think I know where this is stemming from, because I remember hearing about this Reddit stuff. But if I remember correctly, Mike Merles, one of the leaked designers or whatever their titles are called, basically came out and said that he did average damage because it sped up the game. So you did average damage, here's how much you would take, and then you sort of just proceeded on to just streamline combat. But he also ran less combat-oriented games where he threw out the initiative system that we know, and he replaced it with a D6. He made to hits, different. He made damage, just flat numbers, go, go, go. So that way it was meant to be sped up. That's my memory of the history of where that came from. I remember having more confusion looking at like AD&D second edition at the monster manual and just looking at the damage and going like, oh, between 3 to 8 points of damage. How do I do that? what magic do I conjure up to make 3 to 8? And then you've got to just learn, okay, well, it's a D something plus whatever to hit that maximum and to meet that minimum. There you go. That's what you do. It's like, okay, this is making a bit more. Yes, it does help. It helps you do math.
The only one of those I don't think was ever quite defined is 3 to 12 1d10 plus 2, or is it 3d4? And that was ever specified. But, I run it as 1d10 plus 2. I think that's
dice
way of doing it.
I just want dice, more dice. I just want to hear the clickety clankety woo, and then the moans and cries of players.
The thing that reason why that average damage still annoys me a little bit is, to be honest, 5th edition combat is not particularly interesting. It's all been designed so that everyone has something to do every round. There's this idea that it's bad for characters to have to miss turns in combat because they want everyone to be involved all the time. That's why they're always making saving throws to resist spells and shrug off spells. And so many enemies are just sacks of hit points. It's so ridiculously easy for a fighter of level 3 or 4 or higher to hit an ogre. They just give them tons of hit points, and it makes combat not very interesting. And that's even with rolling dice. But if you're taking average damage, it just makes it even more dull.
I'm running Curse of Strahd at the moment. I love the fact that 5th edition introduced layer and legendary actions.
That's a good aspect.
That I look at and I go, I can do things to you. Things that will, in your darkest dreams, haunt you. I'm just looking at what I can do with Strahd at the moment. I am so excited for the event where Strahd gets to throw someone into a room, step into the room, snap his finger, and the door behind him will close. That's an ability he can do. And he can lock the door. And then you need a DC 20 to break that door open. I don't need more than a single round for that player to be alone with Strahd for me to just beat the shit out of them. And they will be left a bloody pulp, and he will just mist his way out of that room, and the rest of the players are going to come in and just find a bloody body. And this will be
return to a darker, more horrible Saxius.
When did I change?
I'm just you pair keep chatting. I'm just going to reply to Halakai's. Ask for a bit of advice here. So just
Sure.
You go keep on going while I do a bit of typing.
But I like that in 5th edition they've introduced all legendary actions and layer points, because these are the sort of things where you can look at a monster, sure, pre-designed, but you can then go, yes, this thing shall become the big enemy. This shall be their adversary. I can take this creature, I can put it at the very top, and I can build the adventure to lead up, like all roads will lead to Rome. And with this, I can make them experience terror, horror, maimed events. And it's just, I'm so excited for what I can do.
I very much like homebrewing monsters, all kinds of monsters, and the legendary actions. What I like about them is they don't even necessarily have to be anything too amazing. Sometimes they're just the thing getting to do something that it already does, but out of turn, which is always good.
Just, I think it was the aboleth. Just being able to just have like walls turn into eyes as it looks into a corridor. Just for a
the
moment.
regional effects and the layer of actions and stuff like that.
Exactly. Just, I'm just picturing how I will just, again, new players or even like mediumly experienced players being in an area of an aboleth and just suddenly watching as trees, shrubberies, and everything just turns into eyeballs, slowly turning to look at them. The absolute mind games I can play with players, with illusions, as they feel that someone is trying to pull away their, what's it called, their winter blanket as they sleep. It will make them terrified. They don't want to sleep, which is exactly what I want them to do. I want them to rack up all the exhaustion points. I want them to reconsider being anywhere near it. Because at the end of the day, this should be terrifying. You should be going up against someone that is, you're walking into their domain, you're walking into their lair. They know this place inside out, and it should be so scary. They should have an edge.
Yeah, I know that the nice one of the things I noticed about a lot of like the regional effects and even some of the layer actions is that they're really easy, and there's plenty of examples of them. So it's really easy to concoct new ones. So like no two aboleths will necessarily be the same. Like, although if your party's running into more than one aboleth on a campaign, they've really done something horribly wrong. But it's nice with dragons, for example. A lot of the dragon layer actions and stuff make up for the lack of spells on dragons pretty well. Like I just recently tweaked an ancient white dragon for a campaign that has the ability to summon up ice-encrusted skeletons in its lair. Now, while that's not necessarily overly dangerous to a party that's going to be encountering an ancient dragon, it is a nuisance that they'll have to deal with while trying to deal with the ancient, white dragon. So.
No, but this is what's making it different, making it more interesting, and it's almost like a counter. It's to me, it's just I like to take that and like bring it in for certain monsters, especially if I decide that this is going to be a big bad. So the pet peeve really kicks in when someone turns around and goes like, they can't do that. Wow.
Anybody who ever said that to me clearly hasn't played in my games, because I hope the crap out of so much stuff. So.
But the thing is, you don't piss off your significant other, and you don't piss off the DM. When you piss off the DM, bad things can happen. Or even worse, you could be taken aside and simply told thank you.
Yeah, I never understood that I totally get the peeve, but I never understood the player behavior that does that, because every monster only acts the way it is in the book until somebody writes a new monster. Like every variation of troll is just somebody looking at troll and saying, what if it did? What if this troll was icy? What if this troll was spectral? What if this troll was even bigger? What if this troll? And that is totally there in the rules. Even the base monsters. Why is it that a player would expect that orc is just a fixed thing? For example, because I find it's often with things like orcs and even like the more mundane monsters is where I've mostly heard that is with players. It's like, all right, well, even the godfather of orcs had what 3 or 4 kinds in his world. Tolkien. He talks about very different. It just I never that it never understood that as a valid complaint. Not to mention, do you want your game to be boring? That's clearly those adversarial players who are trying to game the system who are making that comment.
Go on, Kiki.
That was it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I was regarding orcs, of course. I mean, yeah, you had the goblins of the Misty Mountains who were described as being quite small, and then of course you had the almost like the war machine orcs, the urks, which were sort of a high orc.
And then you even had kind of that split between the old Morgoth orcs and the new Mordor, the new breed of Sauron, or even the orcs from Isengard, and how there were subtle differences, and a lot of it was just in behaviors between there was infighting and prejudice between the orcs in that regard between each other, like.
What on lair actions and stuff. One particular creature, and I like lair actions specifically for unique creatures. The way they've done the Lost Cities Zargon, I changed his name and everything, and the way he looks for my game. But he's got some very interesting lair actions, and one of them involves dropping slimes, things like black puddings and stuff on the party mid combat as a lair action that happens on somebody else's initiative.
Oh yeah,
which is particularly lovely. It was raining green slime on the entrance to his lair, and then a black pudding was dropped next to all the warriors in the party as they attempted to wade through the sludge that he turned the ground in his lair to. So they were moving at about 6 feet per round because they were so slowed by the sludge. While trying to fend off a black pudding that was trying to dissolve them. Yeah, it was great fun.
What I'm happy to see is that 5th edition is even starting to give things like lair and epic, the epic actions and stuff like that to lower CR monsters, just because it's a good mechanic. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be a giant monstrous thing to necessarily warrant having some special ability it can use or have an effect on its environment or something like that.
I mean, the whole lair thing is one of the good parts of 5th edition. It has its good parts, it has its bad parts, and that's certainly one of the good parts. That's one bit that does make combat a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, by the core rules, yes, I do agree that the way it's set up, it doesn't really seem to be overly interesting in 5th edition. Which is why I encourage my players to do all sorts of shenanigans, and my real life group do just that. They start asking questions like, okay, holy water, how can we apply this? Can I put it on my blade and make it semi-holy to fight vampires? Can I do this? Can we combine our actions to do X? And that's what I encourage, and that's what I want my players to do. And the players often are told to think of what it is that you want to achieve. It's my job for translating your cinematic ideas into mechanics. The more complex it is in your head, the more complex it will be on the game table. But risk versus reward, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. That's usually how I pitch it out to them to encourage it.
a bit of a more general pet peeve I've got, and this is probably quite an understandable one, is the whole focus of Wizards of the Coast at the moment towards publishing material that's aimed at players rather than DMs. And I get that it's a sales philosophy. They know they'll get more sales if they put player options in all the books, certainly the mechanics books. But I very much preferred the idea that the players had one, maybe two books aimed at them, and everything else was aimed at DMs.
So you want to keep the hobby alive, though.
True.
Then
Yeah.
just ratio wise, I'm sorry, but like you will be shooting as a company and as a hobby, you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you're like you're looking, if we're just taking the current climate of DM to player ratio, you're looking at a massive loss. Most of your stuff is going to be going online. Then, if you want to really sort of like make any form of like major input, I know, but like there are going to be more players than there's going to be
Yeah,
DMs.
you have to
want
have the players buying books because back in the day, I remember the DM had almost all the books. And they need to change that. I agree with you, Saxus, right there. That's just straight business.
I mean, I accept it is the business model. It has sort of changed the dynamics of the game somewhat in that players buy a book and want something because they bought the book. And
Again,
it puts pressure on the DM.
Let's go back into the time where they did that. First edition AD&D was much more centralized towards the DM, much more. And business-wise, we can see that model was dropped the moment second edition came out. It was just player, and they came out in droves. So much so, they came out with so much stuff for the players that they actually made a loss from it. There was too much going on. And third edition, where they tried to sort of go big back and forth, and that was its own thing. Fourth edition, and now we've got here where it's more player orientated for that. But money wise, it makes sense. But I'm also thinking it's gonna be more beneficial for the hobby if you have a lot of players. Because if I just don't see us ever having more DMs than players. That's just the reality that I look at.
I think it's funny. I just got the new Spelljammer set. My brother was kind enough to buy it for me for my birthday, and right away you can see the focus towards two things: simplifying things, but also focusing towards the player. So in the book, there's now just one kind of Spelljammer helm. There's just the Spelljammer helm, and they got rid of like the old furnace helms and everything like that. So, and that makes it easier for the players because the players never have to worry about where they're going to get their helm, but it also drops down a lot of that subtlety because there's no ranking in the helms anymore where you have better or worse helms, and all of those other kinds of helms were there for DM fuel because there's the life draining helm, so in the old Spelljammer, so maybe the only ship they could get a hold of was the one with the life draining helm, and how are they gonna motivate themselves? That's a good example of things going player focused because there's none of that background information in there that really helps support the DM running in that setting and having variation and variety there. But yeah, I get you.
There is, General mentions here that Call of Cthulhu has very much a GM focus. The thing about Call of Cthulhu, though, I'm a little bit of devil's advocate here. Call of Cthulhu isn't an entry level RPG as far as I'm concerned. It's something that people gravitate to once they've come in via something else. I don't think there's going to be many people whose first role-playing game was Call of Cthulhu. I know of a few, but not many, because it is very much of its own niche. It does its own niche superbly. And I find that as players learn the basics through something like D&D, quite a lot of people will gravitate towards something a bit deeper, like Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining Call of Cthulhu having a player-facing sales, because everything in Call of Cthulhu is basically mere mortals facing whatever the keeper can throw at them, and so he just needs Call of Cthulhu really needs that constant setting information and adventures, and layers of threat, and there's not a lot of room for new player material. They got the player's companion, and that's really just to have there so your players don't have to ask you how much a pistol costs every time they want one, or what airfare to Cairo is like.
One thing I will say is that that first the Call of Cthulhu Investigator's Handbook is a very thorough, very descriptive book, and players really don't need more than that. So certainly, I know that there were other companions in the earlier editions, but the 7th edition, players don't need anything more than that Investigator's Handbook.
I mean, you can definitely get more from some of the older books, but yeah. I do like the city books that they've done, like the Berlin book and the San Francisco book, and all of those. Those are good for the DM. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the points of Call of Cthulhu is that because it is set in a version of the real world, it does help for the DM to have something concrete to draw the world information from, because you have to set the scene and make it feel very real and very mundane at times for the horror to pop when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, my campaign started based in San Francisco because I'm a West Coaster myself, and it was really amazing. Even having most of my family from California on my mother's side, learning just how empty California was in the 20s. It's like you get outside the cities and there's nothing there. I mean, you didn't have the big sprawl, and that was very different. Of course, when you're playing in Lovecraft country, everything is so compressed because East Coast states are so small.
Yeah.
California, you're like, okay, you're starting in San Francisco. If you're going to get to Sacramento in 1920s travel, you're going to be going a while.
I mean, I like playing Call of Cthulhu in Britain in the 1890s, and part of that is the fact that it is compact, but it's also due to my familiarity, and I can do the various British accents that are needed to make it feel more authentic. I can do most of it. I can't do all of them. There's some of them I'm appalling at.
Yeah. One of the big motivators for me doing West Coast U.S. 1920s is not only am I a West Coaster, but there's an author who's actually created his or her, I can't remember off the top of my head, unfortunately, their own West Coast Lovecraft country, just like Lovecraft had done, where he'd created a whole county and new cities and whole new rivers that never existed, right? This person has done that and plunked it kind of in the middle of like Oregon and Washington in the Northwest. So that was kind of fun. We were planning to move up and use that information because that's why not use more fictitious America that never existed. I have a pet peeve.
Go on then.
People who want to mishandle books and feel it's okay just because it's not in perfect condition. Books or gaming materials or materials in general. I don't know how many times I've had somebody get cranky with me because I got on them for mishandling my stuff, and they're like, "Oh, it's not like it's in perfect condition." I'm like, yeah, but I don't want it to get any worse, and it's not yours, it's mine. That's just rude.
I no, I'm with you. I would never in my wildest dream let anyone I didn't trust hold my my second edition, like second or third printing of the Player's Handbook, or the really old books that were printed way back in the day. I wouldn't just let anyone hold those books. Those are precious books. They are a piece of history for me. I don't think I would even bring them to the table. Maybe to show.
I will sometimes take some of my old modules I'm running to the game, but I will almost always seek out a PDF and print out and use a printed copy or a scanned copy when I'm actually running it, because my old modules are precious to me.
They are a piece of history, and that's how I treat them. Historical items. Yeah. I really want them to be treated nicely. So I'll show them. I'll maybe let some people hold them, flick through them, but I will absolutely bring down the wrath of God if anyone mistreats the historical items that I have, because I do. This is weird, but I see these old books as like historical preservations of the hobby, which makes no sense given that they're all PDFs and they exist out there. But yeah,
I've always been one of those gamers who tries to keep his books in as good a condition as possible, but sometimes you can't. Like my original my AD&D DMG is mud stained from when it fell into a ditch on a walk home from a friend's house one night, but still it's in perfectly usable condition. There's a few like cola stains on the inside of the pages and stuff like that, but I had some guy pick it up once, and he's like got the spine flopped back, and I'm like, dude, no. He's like, well, it's just an old. It's not like it's new. I'm like, yeah, it may not be new, but it's also in pretty damn good condition considering I bought it in 1980, whatever.
I mean, this is my original Monster Manual. It's my oldest book, and there's the spine's gone there, and I mentioned in my review my bad colouring in. Oh yes, there's the key ring. Oh yes.
Oh yeah, we the one that I was dumb enough to try and do some of the colouring in mine with felt tips, and it bled through the page and stuff.
Strange you say that. There we go. Some giants.
Yeah. My Fiend Folio is marked up. I love this. My Fiend Folio is marked up in pencil notations all across a bunch of monsters, various arrangements of asterisks and letter codes and stuff like that. I can't remember what they meant. I'm like, what was I going for here? What does this mean? Clearly, I was trying to rate something, or yeah, it was fun.
But that's all part of the history. It's your book. It's part of the history.
Actually, my DMG has my oldest kid's name written in the inside of the cover too, because at one point I had bequeathed all my AD&D books to my oldest. I'm like, nice. I'm like, you can have them, and then they got them and they put their name in them, which I was totally cool with. And then they sort of moved on. I'm like, all right, well, we share this bond now. Both our names are in these books.
With blood, of course.
Regarding treating of stuff, I bought my players' character miniatures. I painted them all intricately.
I'm already squirming. Listen to this.
And I find almost every session I was having to repaint little bits where they chipped because dice had hit them. They'd been knocked over. Somebody had swiped them with his hand, and they'd all gone clattering everywhere. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
I did Warhammer for God knows how many years, and that is just painful.
Playing in public was horrible all the time. I remember being at a game store and some guy walks by and he's like, cool model, and just grabs the thing off the table. This is a neat monster. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, A, you never pull a miniature off the table in the middle of a game. B, go away. You manhandling oaf. It's like,
I try to be a very reasonable person. I will lose any form of humanity when things like that happens, because quite frankly, if you enter into this sort of environment, there are just rules that every nerd abides by, and a few savages who will do these things. I'm sorry. It's fair game. I will get angry at you.
Proper word, savages. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, this is just
Uncouth.
uncivilized. You don't pick up the miniature. You point to them, and go like, "That's really cool. May I?" And then you will either get a yes and no, or very gently, only by the base. And my God, you will do as you are told. Savage nerds. Yes, Omen, you are spot on right. You're dealing with absolute stuff.
Now I'm gonna have nightmare sex. Just thank you very much.
I am here to please everyone else but us.
Trauma. But although if we're talking about Warhammer and pet peeves, I once had a guy tell me that you don't care about the game because we're sitting there, he's going off about his grand tournament, blah blah blah, and he's one of these oafs who like has an army pro painted by a contractor and then wins Golden Demon for best army, kind of a thing. He didn't paint it himself, and then he only did that so he could then auction it off as a Golden Demon award winning army, and he's talking about all his brilliant strategies and stuff. I'm like, I play Imperial Guard to see how long I can last. I play the Imperial Guard to just see how long it takes my opponent to stomp me into the mud. And he's like, well, you don't care about the game. I'm like, really? Really? I'm like, I care about the game. I care about having fun with the game.
There are different groups when it comes to walking. You've got the ones who wants to win. You've got the ones that I fall into the category of. I am literally there to have fun, and if that means losing spectacularly, I will come out with some great stories like fighting the Dark Elves, and the Dark Elves sends these cold ones for like 3 turns around every battle just so he could attack my artillery that was tearing his army to shreds. And there was nothing that gave me more glee than when he was setting up for a charge that I then rolled for my cannons to explode right in front of him. He couldn't charge anything. He had wasted 3 turns running around just to set this one thing up, and I denied it to him. I stood there with a grin, ear to ear, as I just stood there. You can't do it because I blew myself up.
I had a guy get just short of screaming at me for cheating with my Imperial Guard, accusing me of pre-measuring and stuff with my Imperial Guard because I ran a lot of mortars, which were guess range and scatter dice kind of. And I was just like, he's getting all uppity and stuff. And finally he calls the shop owner. It wasn't even like a tournament. It was just like a friendly game. Calls the shop owner over to do something about it. Mind you, this is the shop owner whose couch I have crashed on several times and woke up in the morning, gone home long enough to shower and change clothes and come back to the store. Yeah. It comes over and he's like, okay, well, prove that he's cheating. And he's like, well, he keeps guessing. He's supposed to be guessing and he's so accurate. He's like, okay. He's like, Eli, how are you doing it? I'm like, it's a 4x8 table. His unit is halfway across the table. It's 2 feet away. I'm guessing 24 inches, and it's a foot in. I'm guessing 12 inches in. He's like, that's pre-measuring. I'm like, no, it's not. It's eyeballing. And then I turn to my friend Chuck, the guy who runs the store. I'm like, you were a mortar crewman in the army. Tell me, how do you range mortars? He's like, well, we have some tools, but you can kind of eyeball it too. I'm like, yes. And so, yeah. Anyways,
here's a comment for you, Saxius. Feel proud.
This is my place. Yeah, that's how you should do it. And you should happily have it in front of them when they start whining. Listen, I don't hide what I'm like as a DM. I actively go out of my way to make sure all my players and fellow co-DMs are fully aware of who you're dealing with. Because I'm not going to hide it. I'm just going to enjoy your reactions.
I mean, all that matters is, do you all have fun? And if you've got the right group of players, yeah, of course you are.
Masochistically, yeah, they are having fun, but that's not my problem.
I will say there's nothing more enjoyable than like when you're running Call of Cthulhu and watching the players go, "Oh, that's not good. Oh, I thought things couldn't get worse. Oh, this is so bad now."
Okay. I had a really fun moment where it's not a pet peeve. Sorry, I'm going to go off tangent on this one, but I know.
You're supposed
I
to
know.
be the keeper of law and order.
Guy, but I'm
What
dealing
have
with
we
you
now
too.
if even Saxius goes off wildly
Listen,
off
I've
topic?
been exposed to you too. This is just your doing. Yeah, a line might change. I'll take the loss and level. I had the dinner event in the 5th edition Curse of Strahd, where the players had to go and have dinner with the Strahd, which we, in real life, we actually went to have dinner while we were doing this and continued on. I thoroughly enjoyed playing the mind games of reminding the players of all of the events throughout the sessions leading up to that moment, twisting them around in Strahd's point of view, and for the players to actually sit and go, are we actually bad people? Are we bad heroes?
Are we the
In the way that
baddies?
exactly, because I just presented them as being terrible influences, have made horrendous choices throughout the entire campaign, how their decisions had led to their conflicts and impacts for so many other people that were innocent. And as a matter of fact, he's the only one who has been trying to regain control over Barovia, and they have been meddling in things. And then I managed to twist that around and made it sound like, oh, they've actually been helping him all along. And the players are just on the floor. And I had two players turn around and go, he's having a point. Strahd is actually making sense. That's when I knew I had them. That's when I knew that I cornered.
That's a good
That's
villain, though, when your
that's
villain is sympathetic like that, and you can like, well,
this. When the players give me an inch like that and I can taste blood, I need more. I will keep on chewing like a piranha. Anyway, sorry, bit of a tangent there, but
no. That's
Right, right.
we like the stories. All right, I like the stories.
Yeah, look, we've been on topic for 2 hours and 11 minutes. We're allowed to wander now.
oh yeah,
This
that's
is
right.
not
I've
It's not the
kept
time
you going.
There was the peeve earlier about players wanting to overcomplicate things all the time, which can be fun. But sometimes it's like, you ever get those players who just turn the simplest task, like entering the city gate, into something that's so convoluted. You're just like, why?
I did a video on us doing something very similar to that a few weeks ago with DM Mike from my group. How we managed to overcomplicate something that in the adventure he's running was about a paragraph long and make 2 sessions out of it by trying to dig far too deeply into what wasn't there.
Go ahead, Saxius.
I had a brand called Cthulhu that ran afoul of the English mafia or the English mob or gangs, whatever you want to call them. And the mobsters basically went to one of the players' home to break in and see, like, who are these people? Who are we dealing with? Reconnaissance kind of deal. But that player was home, so he realized that someone was going to come for him, opened the door, locked the door, went one flight of stairs up, and then sat there to wait and listen for what was going on. And he observed as the mobsters went into his apartment, went around, and did some things, came back out, and they fiddled around with his luck, and then they left. The player spent 15 minutes going through every single skill, asking every single question he could ask for, because he was convinced, as sure as the sun would come up, and as sure as the sun would go down, that they had cast some form of spell, that it was trapped, that there was something wrong with it. He could not open this door because something bad would be done. 15 minutes, only to realize that they locked the door behind them, because that's how they found the door.
Yeah, at least in that case, he had some real reason to worry.
I'm like, there's a bomb, there's magic, there's this, there's that. Mind you, he was playing a cultist who was somewhat inducted into the world of Cthulhu, but it was just like your level of thinking here is just.
Yeah, in my particular case, the party was not sneaking. They were not under duress. They were literally just traveling from one city to another, and they had to go to this. They had to get into this city to do like some sort of meeting with a contact, right? They were there to meet somebody, and I describe. So the setting is sort of in the recovery of the fall of an empire. So almost kind of post-apocalyptic, right? So very much city-states, but not like Road Warrior of post-apocalyptic. More like, think of like Dark Age Europe right after the fall of Rome kind of thing. And so the city guards are very much explaining to the party, or they've got two lines. They've got of pedestrian line for a pedestrian gate, and then they've got the sort of the cart, the big main gate, and none of the party has anything horse-wise or cart-wise. And I've been describing to them that yes, both lines are moving slower, but the main one, the pedestrian one, is going smoother. And so they get in the pedestrian line, and I'm like, they can see that that each person coming in is getting checked by the guards, but not like searched. And they even bother to talk. One of the players gets a good idea to ask one of the guys in the merchant line, who looks like he's been here before. Hey, what can we expect? And he tells them, they're going to ask you if you're here. They're going to ask you what your business is. They're going to ask you to turn in your weapons or pay a sword tax. When you come in. And the rest of the party's like, all right, that sounds reasonable. We got gold. We'll just pay the sword tax and keep our weapons on us. But the thief in the party's like, no, I can't do that. And then he's like, why? He's like, well, and he wouldn't give me a good reason. So he then spends like all this time trying to get over the city wall, sneak over the city wall, when all he had to do is go through the gate with the rest of the party. and ends up then can't get over the wall. So he goes in through the sewer. And by the time he gets into the city, the party has been already got through the gate. They're at the inn. They're comfortable. They're fed. They're just hanging out. But I'm like, he's complicated it so much, and I'm like, why did you do that?
I mean, when I was running Horror on the Orient Express, which is a big, complicated scenario anyway. There's one section in one of the scenarios where all it says is the party need to get the ferry across the channel and catch an adjoining train to meet the Orient Express and board it at Chalon-sur-Marne. It starts at Paris, but they will be boarding at Chalon-sur-Marne. That's all the adventure says. It's got 1,000-odd pages of adventure. It's just got a couple of lines about this one bit. I ran it once, and the party were like, okay, we'll get the ferry across and we'll go and meet the train. That's all they needed to do at that bit. The second group I ran through it, the ferry and meeting the train covered up 1.5 sessions.
Oh, jeez.
Because they wanted to know who was on the ferry. Was anybody watching them? What was the ferry like? They wanted to know where they were sitting. They wanted to observe lots of people. They wanted to talk to people on the ferry. They wanted to have food in the town after they got off the ferry. Was anybody following them? Was anybody watching them? Was any suspicious activity going on? And then, of course, they boarded the next train, and they were talking about what they were doing on that train and talking to people on there. And it was, I had to make up and just spout nonsense to try and fill in the gaps for about 5 hours of play, because this group of players really wanted to. And I mean, I did play into them a little bit, and I put one of the possible NPCs on the ferry just to satisfy them, and they ended up murdering him, which actually made it all more interesting. But it was talk about taking 2 lines of an adventure and spinning it out for 5 hours. That was that was extreme.
I have a player. He was playing a barbarian, and he was given a simple task of go to the church in a Pathfinder game, give the church this amount of 1,000 gold, and get this person resurrected. He decides to be sassy with the church, who then starts reminding him that this is not a right for him to be given this service. This service is a benefit for law and order and good people. Ergo, he should mind his manners, which he gets uppity about. And he then gets annoyed that they increased the price because of his manners, being so rude towards them when he's trying to ask them when he's asking the gods for a major favor. Although they look into the body that he's presenting to them and see a good person. But because of the manner of which it's presented, they increase the price. The player look at that and go, oh, they're being petty. Well, I can play this game as well. I am going to go around and exchange every single gold piece for copper pieces. And I will pay them in copper. At which point I had the church refuse to do the deed altogether. And that only led to escalations, which I will leave out. But my Sunday group have got 2 modes. They either fun and jolly, so on, or they will take things to the extreme. Just several thousand gold exchanged into tens, if not hundreds of thousands of copper, that he would then line up in front of wagons and just go, here you are, all the money. Wonders like, we're not counting that. We're not doing that. Take this rotting body and go away. That is the end of that.
Fair response.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we have any more pet peeves? Or are we just in the chatter at the end phase?
We might be getting there. I mean, there's lots of things that come up now and again, but not continuously enough.
Usually if there's a pet peeve, I try to address it. That's really my core thing. Like I really do I do believe in the whole communication and so on. And if there is like an issue, if it isn't a major issue, if it really is just like it's a me thing, well then it's a me thing, and then I can usually just shut up about it because it's not going to drive me nuts. But then that might be like playing style, for example. I might not like how other players play, but they're having fun, so it's a me issue. I should shut up and just let people play.
Yeah, and I'm very consciously aware of my own grumpitude anyways. And that a lot of the peeves that I perceive are, a lot of them are very much a me thing and not other people.
Yeah, of course. That's going to happen all the more when you get as you get older.
My wife, we were playing Monday, and in the middle of playing, I'm running an encounter, and like out of the blue, she's like, "Hey babe, do you need a bookshelf?" I'm like, and it literally ground my brain to a halt for a second. I'm like, I completely lost where I was. I'm like, and I'm sitting there dead in the water, and everybody's trying to continue the encounter. She's like, I just completely threw you, didn't I? Because she had noticed, she had an alert on one of the local buy nothing groups or whatever, and I need bookshelves because we just moved in a while back, and it was there, and she didn't think, I'm like in the middle of doing this encounter, do you need a bookshelf? I'm like, and I know she was trying to be helpful, and the only reason that was really anything is just because my brain immediately latched onto that question and forgot about everything else I was doing.
Chat have helped us out. 2 comments in. We'll address them in the order they arrived. AB Mark II. has said players rolling dice for no purpose, then claiming it was for. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I've seen that.
unsolicited rolls.
That's easy to nip in the bud, though. You just say to them,
You bury them to their neck and feed them
I-
dates.
Oh wow, you're nice.
that didn't happen. You say to them, that didn't happen.
I have my current group trained. They sit dice ready in their hand, asking for permission to roll as they're getting it ready. Well, that's fine. Once I give them the go ahead, like those dice go like, oh. Yeah.
The DM tells you what to roll. Yeah, well, it
Yeah,
tells you
yeah.
when to roll. Yeah, that's
Well,
exactly how it should be.
They can say like, I want to use this to that. That's fine. Go for it. I need to know what you're doing.
It's
Larissa's
only
got a
particularly
quite a-
egregious when they get nasty with you about it. Well, I just rolled a such and such. Can I keep that? No. It's like,
Oh no.
So Larissa's got quite a specific question here. One monster or trap that creators place in their modules that you absolutely hate.
monster or creature that place.
I'm going to
Monster or
think
trap?
about this one. I'm going to think about this one.
What have you not rolling? Like the rust monsters can suddenly jump out of the closet? Come on, guys.
I mean, I get frustrated. I like most monsters and traps, but I don't particularly like it when they are illogical.
So
Yeah, I can't name anything specific, but
the specific wording is the modules. So what modules it is? This is in 3.5. There is the Demon Gates of Shatter, the Gates of Shattergate or Shatterguard, or something like that, where you as a group of players have to run around and deal with the effects of a portal slowly being reawakened that is going to merge the material world and the abyss into an open portal, generating an open access for demons to come in. Thank you. Yes, Mage's music. Demon Gates of Shadowgate. Yes. Of Shadowgate. Whatever. But in that, there is a what's it called? There's a specific room in one of the first modules where you're going to be coming against, like, I can't remember if it's called a howler or a spy, like some form of like demon, and it is just it feels very out of place, especially when no more than 25 to 30 feet away from it, there is meant to be a stupidly powerful otherworldly entity standing guard over a pentagram, and it has just been ignoring the fact that there's this howling demon 25 to 30 feet away from it. Like, I looked at that and went, this makes no sense. It makes no sense that there is this entity whose entire job is to fight demons 30 feet away just because he's down a hole. How? Why? Like that just made me look at the module and go, someone didn't read this.
I think that.
Go on.
Oh no, continue. Sorry.
No, it was just that really made it hard for me to sort of like buy into it as a DM, because when this was a consistent issue I came across where the idea was good, the execution was poor because of how they just didn't factor in monster ecology when they were building out the modules. You know, why are we having tieflings over here and then what's it called? Or demon ogres over there, like
The old Gygaxian ecology.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's what I was going to point out. That in a much more general sense, I even back in the day, it always annoyed me that we just had monsters standing around in ready status, just there to beat us up without any rhyme or reason to it. And I very much quickly became aware of, why is this here? It's like, this doesn't make sense.
mean, I'm going to mention a Gygax module here. B2, Keep on the Borderlands. Pretty much the first cave that you go into is the Kobold Cave. I'm pretty sure there is a pit trap in there that is shown on the map as filling the entire corridor. How do the kobolds get in and out?
So
Weight limit.
no. What you are missing from that module is that there are swing ropes that they yoink their way over as they cross. It is an acrobatic challenge for the players that they have
Triggered
to.
from the adjacent room.
Exactly.
I mean, yes, of course, a good DM will add those sort of little things, but that it's just you look at the map and you think, why? Okay, put those details in there. Put those little bits and
Honestly,
pieces.
short of pit traps and stuff, a lot of traps in dungeons don't make sense and
No.
are very logically hard. Like this ancient temple with its crossbow trap. Well, that bow's lost all tension over the last 1,000 years, and that
Mhm.
cord is probably about as strong as a cooked spaghetti noodle.
One thing I like about the Lost City is the first thing you find there is a trap that has been triggered by a hobgoblin,
Yeah,
and it shows that there's been some thought put into it, in that the trap has been triggered.
and there
body
are
of the-
traps here.
Yes.
You know, so the rest of your players can't go through there and call you a dick for
Yeah.
throwing so many traps at them. It's like you were told right at the beginning there are traps here. Yeah, it's
Now, Omanal says he doesn't like rock grubs and green slime. I think rock grubs are good to throw at low-level adventurers just to teach them to be cautious. And I had a party in the village of Homlet. We've probably all played it. And there's a big dollop of green slime near the beginning of the lower level, and there are a load of zombies a little bit further on. My party remembered the existence of this slime, and they'd found the armory, which had got loads of spears and javelins in. And as the zombies were shuffling towards them, they were running back to the armory, picking up the spears and javelins, dipping the tips of them in the slime, and hurling them at the zombies. So that slime was there as an opportunity. And I think I love the way the players dealt with that, because I could describe the zombies melting into slime in front of their eyes. I thought that was a very clever way of doing it.
one of the first things I noticed when I picked up 5th edition was the absence of green slime in there, and it really annoyed me. And then it's there as an environmental hazard in the DMG. And I loved things like rot grubs and,
Yellow mold.
and all rot grubs and slimes and stuff, because those are very, to me, logical dungeon denizens.
Yes.
Piles of filth that are the decaying remains of previous monsters or adventurers.
Creatures.
Are perfect places for funguses and rot grubs and although I always wanted to, like, what does a rot grub grow into? Because grubs are the juvenile form of something.
Yes, that's one of the ecology questions. Well, what does a rot grub grow into?
It's
A rot butterfly. Actually, grubs turn to beetles, so maybe that's the larval form of all those damn giant beetles you always run into in the dungeons.
That makes
makes
sense.
sense. Makes sense.
Yes. Fire
I don't know.
beetles.
I agree. Rot grubs are fantastic. I would sprinkle them into as many caves and tombs and places where I can. If there is no form of natural ecology that goes around and hoovers up all the dead people,
No gelatinous cubes.
gelatinous cubes. What is it called? Like the one with the long tentacle face eats bodies as well. I can't remember. Carrion crawler, thank you very much. Or giant, what's it called? Insects, anything like that. Rot grubs, because that's just where they will naturally go in. And my usual hint is there is no insects eating the body, because the rot grubs will eat them as well. And it usually means that something like that is beyond even like carrion crawlers wanting to eat it because they know it's that dangerous. So that's that. I give out hints, but
I've used that in reverse, actually. I've actually had a creature eating the rot grubs out of a corpse or a pile of filth. Because, dungeon ecology, there's some sort of, giant insect there. And so the party then kills the giant insect and just figures that that was the encounter, and then they go rifle through the dead adventurer, not expecting rot grubs because you already hit them with a giant spider or whatever else was eating the rot grubs, right? And then they're whammied. But
Rot Grubs also provided one of my games with the best manner of death for Ned Shakeshaft in Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. When there's a vat of Rot Grubs in the cellar, and he was pushed in that vat.
Nice.
I'm stealing that.
That was again. I thought that was clever play. Make use of the dungeon. Make use of what's there. In you go, Ned. You try and stab us in the back. We'll feed you to Rot Grubs.
Oh no, I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to have jars filled with rot grubs that I can run at the monsters and throw at them.
It's a great thing for those kobolds to be leaving around. Have the rot grubs jars hanging in the hallway. Party goes down there. They start using slings to throw rocks at the jars to drop the rot grubs down on the party.
Now there's an idea. I think that's magnificent.
Right, so going back to just traps. Have we all read Grimtooth Death Traps?
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Classic.
A long time
I
ago.
love it. I still try
It's
to
just-
make my own Grimtooth trap style traps
It's
nowadays.
just, no, it's just, no. They are. I can see players stringing me up by my feet first for me to die slowly by all the blood being pulled up to my brain when I try to use these things against them.
What was interesting is they even made remember Grimtooth's dungeon? The full dungeon that was written with Grimtooth stuff in it?
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's a Grimtooth's dungeon.
I know it exists, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, I think that was when they brought his little sister into the kind of the meta for Grimtooth. He's got like a little sister who came in because he was featured. There was little comics with him in the books, but it's Grimtooth is great stuff. I remember just marveling over those back in the day. And
I told my group the scenario of imagine if you have to swing from like one side to the other using a rope, and they go like, okay, so we have to use the rope. It's like, yeah, now imagine that the rope lowers you down so that you're going to fly straight into the wall opposite. Okay, we have to do strength roll. Yes, but on the opposite side you've got invisible spikes that you're going to fly straight into. And they just sat there horrified, asking me why this would ever be made. I was just like,
yeah, I find myself often just sitting down with my DM's journal and mapping out Grimtooth traps, Grimtooth style traps. It's fun.
It's cathartic. Yeah, go on.
Back to pet peeves.
What?
Right. One of mine is the modern assumption that if a player rolls a 20 or rolls high, then they are going to get a beneficial result. In my opinion, it depends entirely on what they're attempting to achieve. Let's say, for example, you've got a pit and one of them wants to jump across the pit. That's his stated action. He wants to jump across the pit. I have him make an athletics roll or a dex check in older version of D&D. If they succeed really well, they will achieve that jumping across the pit. The wall on the other side of the pit is an illusion, which has spikes in it. Therefore, they'd have been better off failing and falling 20 feet into the pit. And there's this assumption that it's the wrong thing to do if they roll really well. to have them fail, to have them come out with a worse outcome. My opinion is no, they do the best attempt at what they were. It's their best possible attempt at what they were trying to achieve. If they were trying to achieve jumping across the pit, then they will hit those spikes on the other side.
Oh, this brings back memories when I had a wizard and I would cast Charm Person on peasants. This is how I got around those problems.
I always liked the pit traps that actually led to that had doors in. There's a few modules that actually have that where there's a door
Tomb
at the
of
bottom of
Horrors.
the pit. Yeah.
Most famous one, Tomb of Horrors.
Talking about dungeon logic, though, I actually I've done that a couple of times where there's a secret door at the bottom of the pit that connects then to like a larder and kitchen, because that's where the monsters of the dungeon would. Oh well, something fell down the pit again. Let's go fetch it out and take it.
Yep. Yeah, it's that's what pits are for.
I had a trap where the players found it, hardly do. They activated, they saw it was a pit trap, hardly do. There's spikes at the bottom, standard, and then there was a door and a little mat that said "Welcome home" at the bottom. The curiosity spiked through the roof. What was down there? Who lived down there? Is this a genius way for a hidden room? What's down there? So the players measured out the length of the trap. They got together their rope, had enough people to hold on to it, sent down the halfling. The halfling went down there, went to the door, knocked on it. The door opened up, a tongue came out, and the giant mimic revealed itself, trying to eat the halfling.
The trap I ran that I particularly liked was it seemed like a regular pendulum trap. It was a long hallway, kind of like half pipe shaped, right? And there's a series of pendulums that are swinging back and forth, and they're not like axe, blade type things. They're more of like a sharp, pokey thing, like a pick, kind of like a swinging pick. And so the party's, expecting that they have to get past these. What they didn't realize is that at each apex of the swing there, it was chipping away at the wall, and where it's chipping away at the wall were little cisterns that had acid in them. So the real trap is the acid that's now going to come flushing down the angled hallway once you've managed to get down the hallway and escape, make it past the swinging pendulums. You're like, yeah, we made it past. Clip, flush.
Yeah, I mean, a good trap is one where just like that, where they what they see as being the trap isn't the real trap. So
the misleads,
it misleads, yes, the misdirection. That
was very typical of Grimtooth, actually. I remember some of his simple ones, like the door traps. The door is, it's stuck. So the player's gonna say, I'm gonna kick the door down, but the door is hollow, and when you kick your leg goes through it, and there's a guillotine inside of it, and it cuts your leg off.
That's very similar to the sphere of annihilation, isn't it? Really, in the famous sphere of annihilation in Tomb of Horrors. It's all the same sort of idea. If you put your hand in here or your foot in here or your head, you're going to lose it.
Yeah. If we're talking about dungeon stuff, there's always been one thing that's been a pet peeve of mine in dungeon design is dungeons that take place in truly hostile environments but have no real environmental impact on the party. Like, you'll be going through volcanic caves, but you never have to worry about, except for specific encounters with like choking gas or toxicity or heat exhaustion or anything like that.
I mean, it's always nice when especially a module writer tries to take into account the environment and brings in some environmental effects.
But they don't do it very often.
They don't. No.
Yeah, like I ran an adventure where the whole adventure was crawling down into a volcanic vent system to where a monster was perfectly happy, and the party's like, "Can I rest?" I'm like, "No, you can barely breathe. you can't rest."
Hidden Shrine of Tomorrow-chan.
Yeah.
Filled with poison gas. I better get a move on because you're going to be taking damage.
Yeah, or even just like the I think there's a common misconception about just how uncomfortable some environments are. Like every time your players are going through a swamp or a jungle, you are literally get eaten alive.
Oh my god.
You know,
Just trying to sleep like in a jungle environment, you're gonna have so many creepy crawlers all over you that night.
I had a PC get attacked by ants, just regular ants,
Yes.
while they're camping.
Holy shit.
Because I had them like, they're like, okay, well, we need to find, we're gonna look for a place to camp because it's getting dark. I'm like, all right, roll a nature, roll, they're like, I'm like, roll a survival check to see if you can, find a proper place, right? Because it's the jungle, it's not full of, pre-made campsites, and and they rolled poorly.
Have you ever tried camping out in a forest at night and actually getting to sleep?
I remember getting to a historical reenactment event past dark, and even this was in a place with prepared campsites. Well, one guy in our group already claimed the picnic table, sleeping on top of it. And because we were there so late, nobody wanted to even set up their tents. We were just exhausted. We had driven from Washington to Southern Oregon. And another guy already claimed under the picnic table, so I couldn't do that. So I just grabbed my sleeping bag and I walked off into the underbrush, under a tree to get some shelter, from whatever rain might hit, because it's the Northwest. And I went to sleep, and I woke up so itchy and being assaulted by these orange flies that just would not relent. It's like, and I was miserable with those welts the whole weekend.
I remember marshalling on a rally event with my brother and my mum, and we were in a camper van, so we're plenty safe from all of that. And we parked up in the Welsh forest, in a little forest sort of clearing near the track that we were going to be marshalling on the next day, and we barely got a wink of sleep because at night that forest came alive. And you could hear all manner of birds and animals. Foxes were the worst. It was springtime, so it was foxes mating season.
I went to a LARP event, very badly prepared, I won't lie. And we were allowed to sleep in they had made a teepee that was used by the community. And I hadn't brought any proper sleeping equipment with me, so sleeping in Danish summer, so you're only looking at just about 10 degrees, maybe a little bit less. But it was just difficult because I barely got a wink of sleep. And then the following day, I've got to put on my chainmail. I've got to put all my equipment. I've got to go marching throughout the forest and do fighting with orcs and elves. Not having the basic stuff like winter blankets, a tent, or any of that stuff. Oh, good heavens, that is terrible. And then, as you guys have been saying, sleeping in areas with active critters or active animals, they're going to look at you and go well, you're encroaching on my territory. And insects especially will not care. Especially hive-minded insects will just not care. There's more of you than there is of you.
And if you've got food, they'll help themselves to it.
Oh God, yes, they will.
Yeah, real quick, where I used to live in the Northwest, every time we went camping, there was always a ranger there going, well, there's been bears in the area. There's a mama bear with cubs, and so no night's sleep was ever comfortable.
All right. What about this point here from Halakar then? A fellow student in college had a saying about traps. The more elaborate the trap, the worse the DM. Thought being he's trying to harm the party and not challenge it. For me, that depends on whether the trap has a solution that the players can work out. And if there are enough clues, if there are clues that are discoverable as to the nature of that solution, beyond just casting a fine trap spell or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, using the trap that I used as an example before with the picks, if the party looked, they would see that the picks were hitting the wall and chipping away the wall.
Yeah.
And they could, they could infer, things from that. Yeah, I tend to not like to use traps as gotchas without some sort of warning. I like the example you had before with the pit trap that's already been sprung, or something like that, or the falling rock trap or something like that. Also, if I'm using instead of traps, a lot I like to use hazards and obstacles, which are basically traps. They just occur incidentally, and if I'm using those, I will have like broken floor show up, or crusty ground show up before somebody actually has a risk to fall through the floor at some point. Because I don't want to just spring it on them. But yeah, if you're talking about individual traps, there are ways to make them the complicated Grimtooth traps. There are plenty of gotchas in there, but there's also a good number of traps there that do have clues.
And I think one of the key things for me is who put the trap there and why is it there? What's its purpose?
And why does it work the way it does? I mean, because that's the other thing. Is like, who put it here is all well and good, but like, why would anybody build it this way? Like you mentioned with the pit traps with the kobolds, how do they get through it?
I look at that and think, I'd take the compliment.
Thought you might say something like that.
I do. It's end of the day, like, it depends. Like, I have a player, whenever he DMs, I know that he will be throwing traps at us at every single map. And that's because he, as a DM, is very aware that resource management is an important thing. And therefore he will use enemies that will, if we are approaching, a good example is we played Starfinder. We had to go out and deal with rebels. The rebels are going to be putting up traps in the surrounding areas with entryways that only they know. That's logical. That makes sense. It still meant that it was a pain for us to approach their encampment because of the amount of bear traps, pit traps, and alarms. Like simple alarms, like a mouse trap and a what's it called? And a blank round that goes off when you accidentally trip over the wire.
Yeah,
that's just like
that's why
brilliant.
That's why people would use traps. And one trap I like, again, I often talk about my favourite adventure, since the Secret of Saltmarsh, and there is a lovely little trap in there. You've got to think, why would the smuggler captain have a trap on his personal possessions? Because he doesn't entirely trust the people he's working with. They are a group of smugglers, after all, a group of ne'er-do-wells. He's got a needle trap on one of his boxes. All it does is inject indelible dye into the finger of the person who sets it off.
Gives him the black spot.
Yeah. To basically say, this is the culprit. I like that. It doesn't do much else, but I like it because it just fits the environment absolutely perfectly.
Oh, just think of how paranoid the players will be.
Yeah,
Anyway.
They've been marked, just wondering what actually happened to them. I love that one.
Detect poison, detect magic, medicine. Give me your finger. You don't need this finger anymore.
Talking about old traps and stuff too. I actually used a basically a dud trap on my party once, and they spent the entire adventure wondering what they had triggered. They didn't realize that the trap just didn't work. It was just old and wasn't working right. And so they heard some mechanisms work and some clicks and clacks, and they spent the rest of that dungeon just wondering what they had activated and when it was going to hit.
Anyway,
Just gonna let everyone know. I am gonna end this around midnight because I've got work tomorrow, and Saxius is on my side of the Atlantic. And have you got work tomorrow as well, Saxius?
yes.
Yes. So we've got 5 minutes to cram in anything else.
Let's get a question from the chat. A peeve from the chat.
Come on, then.
Come on, guys. Pet peeve us.
Just throw out anything and everything.
Yeah. Give us a pet peeve
to discuss or just to agree with.
No. I mean, AB agrees with you saying about watch the players panic at the ink. That's that's what tends to happen. That's what tends to happen. But then that's a perfect example of how you use a trap, in my opinion. It's got a purpose. It's got a realistic outcome. It's there for a reason.
He's just musing.
He's just giving you crap about cutting your stream short. No,
I agree that he is cutting it short. That is quite a pet peeve.
What?
The ink spot is right up there with, if you think about it, right up there with, somebody rolling detect traps, and you're like, you don't find any traps. Yeah, like.
Okay, here we go. Right.
Oh, that's delicious.
I love oatmeal and raisin cookies. If you bring them, I will devour them. I'm sorry whether they're there for me to eat or not. If you present me with oatmeal and raisin cookies, I will consume them.
I adore oatmeal raisin cookies. Yeah.
Sorry, this is the wrong crowd. We all like oatmeal.
I'm in good company here. I prefer if the oatmeal is not overly sweet though. Like a lot of store-bought oatmeal cookies are just way too sugary. Of course, that's America for you, but
I don't like. I mean, as I said on the last stream, we do have cookies in Britain, but they are very different to biscuits. Biscuits are more brittle. Cookies are softer.
General Nut brought out a good pet peeve, the one that I quite agree with, just above Halakar.
Okay.
DM's
I will get as a player, I've had this a few times, but I will get very angry at a DM because when you're sitting in as a player, there are times where you generally draw out a blank. I really will. Just who are you to think like you have the answers in front of you, especially as a DM, and players start usually from scratch, if anywhere, and then they have to gather up whatever evidence that they recognized and build towards it. It's why DMs usually have to say that or have to browbeat them. No, not all information is sorted out the way that you want it to.
And a lot depends on how the DM presents the information. I mean, this could easily be a fault of the DM not telegraphing the information correctly or not giving enough information.
Yeah, I always run and write my content and stuff. I mean, my adventures with the assumption that the players are smart, and are going to figure it out. And if they don't, that's not on me, and I'm not gonna usually parrot back for them either. I'm going to run the adventure the way I wrote it, and otherwise it's kind of defeating the point of actually having challenges in the game. I remember
DMs who advertise one system but really run something else. I don't. I mean, I say I run first edition on my Saturday game, but I don't run it by the book. But I'm open about that. I am open about that.
Nobody did. Don't worry, you're okay.
But no, I can't imagine someone really taking this literally. I can't imagine someone saying they're running first edition and it's actually fifth edition. I mean, how would you get all the fifth edition mechanics in first edition? Still call it first edition? It would be nearly impossible. There are a lot of DMs who obviously opened up first edition, took away class and race requirements and that sort of thing. I've seen that happen a lot. It annoys me. That's a pet peeve of mine nowadays. I think that you should stick with those restrictions or give an in-world reason for removing them. But I don't see that all that off. As far as I'm concerned, you personalize the game and you advertise whichever system is closest to whatever you're running.
I will out myself for a pet peeve I'm sure I've caused in some of my players. And that's being the DM who always has another game that he wants to get the players to play. Because I'm a many game system player. I'm like, D&D is really great, but what I really want to do is run Star Frontiers. Star Frontiers is really great, but have you tried Top Secret?
That's ADHD DMing, isn't it? It's just like bang bang. We'll try this. We'll try this.
My
we'll try that.
problem
We'll try
is that my creativity is very much influenced by outside sources. So I'm literally like one commercial away from wanting to watch another run another D&D campaign because it'll get me thinking, or like I'll listen to a murder podcast and suddenly I'm like, that would make a great Call of Cthulhu adventure.
I think last thing for the stream about dice. Dice have brains. You have to train them like you train a dog. So make sure you have dice jail, a little dice jail. If your dice are rolling really badly, put them in dice jail and don't pay them any attention for about 10-15 minutes. Take them out of dice jail and they'll be nice to you then.
One of my happiest gamer dad moments is watching my youngest build a dice jail at the table while we were playing. Like, I picked up a bunch of coffee stir sticks and some glue from my gaming stuff and started building a dice jail while we're playing.
Go on.
Surely you have a dice jail, Saxius.
I have the same set of dice that I've been playing since I began D&D. They have rolled consistently below average. I have rolled the hit points of a 7-headed Hydra and gotten 15. 15 out of rolling 7 D8s. I have run a 2-year campaign in 2nd edition that is still ongoing, where my players are correctly accusing me of not rolling the hit dice of the monsters because I have to get my wife to roll the hit dice because I can't roll the hit dice. I rolled for the war chief of an orc, and I got less hit points than an average orc that was in his warband. He couldn't be the war chief. I had to swap their hit points around.
There's one of my players who's he always rolls hit points and he always rolls notoriously low. And we were creating MERP characters a few weeks back, and his character had 3 points in body development, which means he gets to roll 3d10 for his hit points, and he rolled 1, 1, 1.
Yeah.
1, 1, 1 in 1,000. It's bad.
One of my players, a longtime veteran of D&D, sat down and said, "Oscar, I would never in a million years ever do what I'm about to do. But I know who is rolling the dice here. So I am going to cast Charm Person on a Yuan-Ti, a creature with 18 intelligence and very good anti-magic. And I bricked every single save to the point where when it came to him resisting the charm spell itself, I rolled a natural 1 for everyone to see. Not I am consistently rolling below average, and that's the fun of my games. Because
You're
I am evil, but I can't enforce my evilness.
Well, isn't that the best way to be, though? Isn't that ultimately yeah?
My players love it because
You
they
are-
know what I've.
You are Wile E. Coyote. You are that villain in campy spy movies who's always going to lose at the end, who cackles away throughout the film, but you know he's going to lose.
Yeah. At least I put on a good show.
Yes. And on that note, I'm going to end the stream now and say thank you to Elfbait and thank you to Saxius. You've been absolutely marvelous once again. I am very lucky to have people like you joining in for these entertaining chats on a Wednesday. I'm going to say thank you to everybody who's been in chat tonight, because I think chat's been fantastic. Everybody's been joining in. I think it's probably more chat comments tonight than we've ever had. So it's great. We've all got pet peeves. A lot of us are highly irrational, and let's just stay that way, because that's what makes us all individuals. Thank you all. Cheers.
And have a good night. Thanks for having us.
See you again in a week.
Bye.
Bye.